The most powerful man in the empire stares down at a little girl and casually asks her to be his daughter. The girl is absolutely flabbergasted, realizing she's face to face with the protagonist of a famous novel. He raises an eyebrow, genuinely confused by her hesitation. But deep down, she's sweating bullets because she knows this guy is a straight-up murderous psycho. Flashing back a bit, the girl is just a street urchin trying to study a newspaper. Her beggar friend Walter teases her, pointing out she doesn't even know how to read. She shoots him a fierce glare, defending her minimal vocabulary skills. She confidently declares they need to get jobs so they can finally escape the streets. But she knows changing their miserable fate is easier said than done. After her mother passed away, she was forced to resort to begging just to survive. Luckily, her adorable face makes her a magnet for free food from wealthy nobles. Her friends act as lookouts, pointing out the richest targets in the crowd. And whenever she scores a massive loaf of bread, she happily splits it with the whole gang. One afternoon, Walter spots a towering, wealthy-looking man and nudges her. At first, they notice a suspicious guy in a red hat walking by in the background. But Walter redirects her attention to the imposing man in the black cloak, and she volunteers for the mission. Little does she know, this single choice is about to flip her entire world upside down. She cautiously tugs on the man's dark sleeve, putting on her best puppy dog eyes for a spare coin. When he turns around, she's completely starstruck by his incredibly handsome face. But he completely ignores her charm, coldly brushing her off like a pesky fly. Suddenly, a jolt of recognition completely breaks her brain. Her mind flashes back to her previous life, lying entirely bedridden in a hospital. She realizes she reincarnated straight into the pages of the fantasy novel she used to read. The book was all about the notorious Duke Llewellyn. She vividly remembers a specific chapter where the Duke was hunting a dangerous criminal. In the story, Callan was desperately trying to catch the culprit before he boarded a train. The criminal was known for wearing a red hat, but Callan totally missed him in the crowd. The guy had disguised himself as a regular commoner to blend in. Callan walks right past the smiling killer without even realizing it. Believing the criminal is fleeing, Callan sprints toward the train station. But tragically, the killer doubles back to the slums and massacres over 30 people, starting with her friend Walter. Snapping back to reality, her eyes widen in sheer panic. She realizes the timeline is playing out right in front of her, and Walter is about to get absolutely wrecked. Without hesitating, she grabs a fistful of Callan's cloak with all her might. She screams at him not to go to the station, warning him that innocent people are going to die. She quickly points out the suspicious man in the red hat who just ducked into a nearby alley. With pure desperation, she reveals that the man is none other than the wanted devilish killer, William. Hearing this, Callan immediately pivots and dashes toward the alleyway. A loud scream echoes through the area as the bystanders jump in shock. The little girl peeks around the corner, trembling as she watches the confrontation unfold. Callan corners the killer, unleashing a terrifying wave of dark magic that consumes the space. With a swift, brutal strike, Callan sends the criminal flying across the pavement like a ragdoll. He happily stomps on the killer's face, casually mentioning that beating scum to death is his absolute favorite hobby. The killer screams in agony while the girl covers her ears, realizing the so-called hero is totally unhinged. Suddenly, the screaming comes to a dead halt. Terrified of what he might do next, she decides to book it and run for her life. But Callan instantly snatches her by the collar, stopping her dead in her tracks. She drops to the ground, coughing violently as his massive shadow looms over her. He leans in close with glowing red eyes, demanding answers, while she shakes like a leaf, begging for mercy. Just then, a group of guards rushes onto the scene, interrupting the intense stare-down. To calm her down, Callan hands the crying girl a shiny gold business card. Surrounded by dissipating dark magic, he tells her to come find him so he can properly repay her for the help. She sits totally frozen on the ground, clutching the card as his imposing figure walks away. Later that night, she shivers under a crusty newspaper blanket, cursing her luck for being reincarnated as a literal background extra. She groans about her miserable beggar life, especially the fact she hasn't eaten anything delicious in this world. She remembers her parents from her past life wishing for her to be born happy and healthy. Well, she was born healthy, but the happy part got totally thrown out the window. The next morning, she wakes up with a massive yawn, completely unaware she's covered in bright red flowers. She picks one up, wondering where the heck these lilies came from. Suddenly, her eyes lock onto the weird symbols printed on her newspaper blanket. Her brain clicks, and she realizes the letters perfectly match the crest on Callan's gold card. She quickly drops the card to inspect the text. Her eyes light up like fireworks. The Duke of Llewellyn is recruiting maids, and she knows this is her golden ticket out of the slums. Cut to the Duke's massive estate, where a guard stares at her like she's absolutely crazy. She stands her ground, proudly stating the Duke personally gave her the card and invited her over. The guard inspects the gold piece, heavily doubting this tiny street kid. Just then, a sharp-looking young man walks up, annoyed by the commotion. The girl immediately recognizes him as Jade, Callan's son. Jade scoffs, sarcastically wondering if his father has picked up a weird new hobby of collecting beggars. She insists she has an important story for the Duke, so Jade surprisingly sighs and lets her inside. He leads her into a ridiculously luxurious room where Callan is chilling in a chair. The moment Callan looks her way, she starts trembling like a chihuahua. Jade assumes she stole the card, but Callan casually admits he actually owes her a huge favor. Jade is absolutely flabbergasted, while the girl flinches under their intense stares. Mustering all her courage, she politely asks if they are looking to hire maids. Callan is completely baffled, so she nervously explains she saw his newspaper ad. Deep down, she's praying he'll hook her up with a job since she literally saved his life. He casually asks her age, and she proudly declares she's 9. She instantly goes into full salesman mode, flexing that she's a super healthy kid who only needs one meal a day. She rapidly lists off her skills, boasting about her floor scrubbing and laundry abilities. She even hilariously offers to shove herself down the chimney to clean it since she's so tiny. Suddenly, a beautiful woman walks in and giggles at her pitch. The girl recognizes her as Marion, Callan's little sister. Marion gently asks about her parents, and the girl explains her mom passed away years ago. Jade coldly asks where she sleeps, and she bluntly admits she sleeps on the streets. Panicking, she wildly waves her arms, swearing she doesn't carry diseases and sleeps in a clean alley. The entire room goes dead silent, making her sweat buckets. Marion leans in, wondering why she wants to be a lowly maid when the Duke could give her a way better reward. The girl looks down, quietly admitting she just wants to be something different. She explains she just wants to be an ordinary person who doesn't get kicked around in the streets anymore. Marion's heart melts. She gently pats the girl's head, saying she's proud of her. But then, Marion notices something poking out of the girl's clothes and pulls out the red flower. Callan's eyes immediately narrow as he recognizes the bright red petals. The vibe shifts completely as he intensely demands to know where she got it. Terrified he thinks she stole it, she frantically stammers that she woke up with it, blaming it on her florist friend. Brushing it off for now, Marion asks how much of a salary she wants, and the girl eagerly says she'll take anything. She timidly asks for half an adult's wage, then quickly downgrades to a quarter, looking super anxious. Callan completely ignores the money talk, staring her down to check one last detail. How did she know he was after William? Smirking internally because she prepared for this, she claims she recognized the killer from a wanted poster in the alley. Callan coldly twists the red flower in his hand, pressing further. Out of everyone in the crowd, why ask him for help? The girl panics as she realizes he's totally interrogating her, and nervously tries to play it off as a pure coincidence. The girl flashes a bright smile, buttering him up by saying she asked him for help simply because he's so incredibly handsome. Callan smirks but throws one last test her way, demanding to know how she deduced he was heading to the train station. She quickly explains there's only one reason a well-dressed noble would rush through a filthy alleyway. Drawing a mental map, she confidently points out the back alley is the absolute fastest shortcut to the station. Callan is genuinely impressed, complimenting her sharp wits. She stares up at him hopefully, wondering if she finally cleared his intense suspicions. Pointing to the door, Callan instructs her to wait in the next room while he discusses the situation with his family. She plops down in the hallway, letting out a massive sigh and praying she didn't just fumble her only chance. At this point, she doesn't even care about being a fancy maid. She tightly clasps her hands, begging the universe to just let her work in the stables or be a lowly apprentice. Meanwhile, inside, Marion casually suggests taking the pitiful girl in. Jade immediately shuts her down, sternly reminding his aunt that children aren't pets. Marion argues that sending her to the temple would at least guarantee her food and an education. But Callan instantly rejects that idea, noting she'd be forced into becoming a nun. Marion points out they can't make a child a maid either, or else wild rumors will completely ruin the dukedom's reputation. Exasperated, Jade sarcastically asks if they should just raise her, telling his dad to stop making unfunny jokes. A dark grin spreads across Callan's face as he crushes the red flower, declaring he isn't joking at all. A short while later, the girl nervously sits on the massive couch with the entire family. Callan drops the bad news, explaining that the maid advertisement she saw is a year old. Her shoulders slump in utter defeat, silently cursing herself for getting her hopes up. But then Callan reminds her she promised to do anything he asked, and casually offers her 5 gold coins a week. She aggressively crunches the numbers in her head, absolutely mind-blown by that fat stack of cash. She realizes there's zero chance he's giving away that much money for a simple chore. Total panic sets in as she remembers his creepy taxidermy hobby, terrified he's gonna stuff her like a bear. Callan awkwardly rubs his neck, admitting the family has never had a daughter, so he has no clue what girls do. Without missing a beat, he drops the ultimate bombshell and casually asks her to be his daughter. Her brain stutters, completely convinced he doesn't actually mean legal adoption. She loudly wonders what kind of weird maid job title adopted daughter is. Marion bursts into hysterical laughter, clarifying she won't be a maid, but will actually be served by them. The girl's brain entirely short-circuits at the absurd plot twist. Callan shoots his sister a glare, annoyed that all her money talk caused this massive misunderstanding. Suddenly, a sharp-looking butler enters the room, announcing that the prince is waiting outside. Callan doesn't even blink, coldly ordering the butler to kick the prince out because he's busy chatting. The girl completely sweats bullets, realizing Callan is such a boss he can just casually ghost the royal family. He gently pats her head, declaring she's far too small for hard labor and can just live comfortably in the mansion. She tightly clenches her dress, weighing her options. Accepting this offer means instantly becoming the most noble and protected girl in the entire country. Sensing her hesitation, Callan asks if she dislikes the idea. Her eyes sparkle as she boldly accepts, ready to seize this insane once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Callan nods in satisfaction and leaves all the tedious adoption arrangements to his butler. Marion completely freaks out, pointing out Callan doesn't even know his new kid's name. He shrugs, planning to just invent one. Realizing she never introduced herself, the girl quickly speaks up. She proudly declares her name is Ree, a gift from her late mother, causing Callan to totally freeze. He stares at her and accurately guesses she was born on a Monday, completely startling her. He smoothly explains that Ree translates to Monday in an ancient language. Later, she's led into a lavish bathroom that is ridiculously larger than a whole banquet hall. She peeks out from the curtain to excuse the butler before her bath. The butler introduces himself as Kshin, politely suggesting she save her questions for after she washes up. But she desperately begs for just one answer, asking him what being an adopted daughter truly entails. Kshin formally states she'll be his little master, but she clarifies she wants to know why the Duke chose a street orphan like her. Kshin calmly explains that while rare, noble families adopting commoners isn't entirely unheard of. Sometimes they need a playmate for an only child, or they adopt orphans for charity, raising them to be great talents. He notes that raising her as a noble will earn the Duke major praise for his mercy. Ree nods, seeing this as a charity case and silently vowing to repay the massive favor when she grows up. Deep down, she knows her chances of surviving as a beggar in a world full of murderers were absolute zero. Soaking in a luxurious rose-petal bath, she feels overwhelmingly grateful for a safe place to eat and study. Kshin formally apologizes for his previous coldness, bowing deeply and promising to treat her as the young lady of the house from now on. He admits the Duke usually hates people, making this favor a total wild card. He warmly assures her that the only thing she needs to focus on is growing up healthy and peaceful. Ree calls out to the butler as he leaves. She sinks into the bubbles, seriously doubting the peaceful part since her new dad is literally a stone-cold killer. Her mind races through the novel's lore, remembering Callan is a cursed warlock who has to kill to survive. The more magical abilities he absorbs from his victims, the stronger he gets. Knowing this, his family and the royals teamed up to weaponize him. He's basically a serial killer who exclusively hunts other serial killers, a one-man black ops squad. She rationalizes that while he's totally terrifying, he's technically on the side of justice, kind of like a dark anti-hero. Suddenly, a squad of maids marches into the bathroom. Ree nervously hides underwater, blowing bubbles like a shy turtle. An overly enthusiastic maid brandishes a sponge, ready to scrub her down to the bone. Ree stands up, dripping and wide-eyed. The bathwater is instantly pitch black from all the street dirt, forcing the maid to awkwardly offer a refill. Out of the tub, Ree fiddles with the towel, absolutely mind-blown by how soft the fabric is. The maids finally finish dressing her, and she looks ridiculously adorable in a frilly white dress. She checks herself out in the mirror, stunned to see her hair is a vibrant strawberry blonde. The maids totally fangirl over her makeover, twirling her around and calling her an actual angel. The head maid smiles proudly and announces that dinner is served. Ree walks into a massive dining hall, completely empty except for a ridiculously long table loaded with food. Her eyes sparkle at the absolute feast spread out before her. She groans, struggling to hoist her tiny self into the giant dining chair. She stares at the roasted meats and fresh bread, practically drooling. Her stomach violently growls as she politely waits for the rest of the family to show up. Cut to 20 minutes later, and she is absolutely demolishing the food. She gnaws on a massive loaf of bread, going completely feral. She takes a massive bite, letting the flavors explode. She marvels at how soft the bread is, realizing it's been ages since she tasted something this good. Remembering how her past life illness ruined her appetite, She gets super emotional, tearing up over how delicious everything is. Suddenly, Jade speaks up, casually leaning on his hand and noting how much she can pack away. Ree nearly jumps out of her skin, completely spooked because she didn't even hear him sit down. Jade coolly points out that she's actually stuffing her face in his designated seat. Panicking, she springs up to apologize, but immediately loses her balance and topples backward right into his lap. She sits frozen like a deer in headlights. Jade smoothly picks her up and plops her into the chair across from him, instructing her to sit there next time. He stares intently at the back of her head. He leans in and sniffs her hair, asking if she smells like strawberries because of her hair color, but she nervously blames the soap. Noticing her sudden pout, Jade asks what's wrong, and she sheepishly admits she completely devoured his meal. She flashes back to the slums, remembering how her friends would split a single crust of stale bread just to survive. Tears well up in her eyes as she cries that she wanted to be friends with him, but now he just sees her as a massive glutton. Jade waves it off, admitting he didn't make a sound because he was too busy watching her eat. Ree looks confused and Jade smirks, finally understanding why she claimed she only needed one meal a day, because she eats like an absolute tank. Ree gets incredibly flustered, realizing she must have looked like a starving maniac to Jade. But Jade just tells her to eat more, casually mentioning she looks exactly like Popo when she stuffs her cheeks. He explains Popo was a cute winged cat he used to raise that had absolutely zero self-control around food. Ree freezes, slowly piecing the pet analogy together while clutching a pastry. She awkwardly guesses it was his favorite pet, but Jade bluntly drops a bomb. The experiment failed and it died. He casually adds he even stuffed it and offers to show her the taxidermy, making Ree violently shake her head in terror. Sweating bullets, Ree wonders what kind of messed up Frankenstein experiment killed the cat, silently praying she isn't his next test subject. Jade explains he just tried to extend its life by keeping it warm and giving it medicine, but it died of old age anyway. Ree lets out a massive breath, realizing he literally just meant nursing it. She recalls Jade's character from the novel, quiet, strong, but deep down, a decent guy. Relieved, she smiles and tells him the cat was probably super grateful for his care. Jade suddenly shifts the mood, asking why she wants to be friends with him. She says she's just thankful he let her stay, but Jade corrects her, saying his father made that call. Ree mentally notes that if Jade had objected, Callan would have kicked her to the curb in a heartbeat since Jade is the golden child. Jade looks down, solemnly stating that siblings can't become friends. But then he leans in real close, hinting that they can get closer somehow, adding that it's fun to watch her eat. Suddenly, Jade's expression turns dead serious as he states he has a question for her. He brings up the mysterious red flower with the golden cords. His red eyes lock onto her as he intensely demands to know who she really got it from. Ree is completely taken aback by the sudden interrogation. She remembers Callan having a similarly deadly look on his face when he saw the petals. She wonders if Jade also thinks she stole it and firmly denies it. Jade leans back, wondering aloud why his father actually adopted her. Leaning in again, Jade bluntly asks if she killed someone, completely frying her brain. Ree furiously waves her hands, pointing out she's way too tiny to assassinate anyone. Jade then pivots, asking if she's done anything bad. She nervously admits she was mistakenly accused of pickpocketing once. She tries to explain she was just picking up a dropped wallet in the street. Jade cuts her off, his eyes narrowing as he asks if the people hit her a lot. Ree touches her cheek, admitting she got slapped a few times and almost died. Jade listens closely, concluding she isn't just his father's new toy. Ree realizes Jade is just trying to figure out if she's Callan's next victim, making her seriously question her life choices. Jade states the person who hit her is scum and asks if she remembers their face, but she says it's been too long. Jade smiles chillingly, promising that if she ever remembers, he'll let her play with their head like a soccer ball. Ree nervously thanks him, internally screaming that she'll take that secret to the grave. Later that night, a full background check on Ree is delivered. Xin confirms her mother died of an illness in the Seton district slums. He states she lived as a harmless beggar with zero criminal ties. Callan listens from his armchair, concluding she's totally clean. Callan deduces the only reason for her adoption is the red flower, knowing a street kid couldn't just stumble upon it. He identifies it as a rare red morning glory with a gold pattern. He reveals the chilling truth. The flower is a direct challenge sent by the person who murdered his mother. Xin wonders if Ree is the killer's next target or an accomplice. Callan plans to keep a very close eye on her either way. Xin doubts a 9-year-old could be a spy, but Callan teases his butler for having a soft spot for cute kids. Xin switches topics, asking what to do about Jade, who completely isolated himself after his chimera cat died. Callan's eyes glow with a dark, violent intensity. Cut to a dark basement, where Callan is casually sitting on a chair that's literally crushing a man's face. Kshin apologizes, noting the criminal got a lower dose of his sedative. Callan ignores the screaming, mentioning the man slaughtered 30 innocent people and collected their body parts. Callan asks if the sick collection was returned to the families. When Kshin says no, Callan ponders the ultimate punishment. With a terrifying smirk, Callan orders the killer to be chopped into 30 pieces and hand-delivered to the victims' families. Kshin coldly grabs the man's squirming leg, wondering how that'll work as a gift. Kshin unleashes his own dark magic, deciding the current punishment isn't nearly enough as the criminal screams in muffled agony. Meanwhile, Ri is dreaming about her past life, stuck in a sterile hospital room reading books. Young Ri excitedly tells her mom she wants to grow up and catch bad guys, wishing she wasn't so weak. In a dream of her past life, Ri's mom praises her smarts, mentioning how much she admired the frighteningly elegant Llewellyn family. Ri realizes the days of Duke Llewellyn family was the very last book she read before passing away in the hospital. She stirs in her sleep, caught in the bittersweet memories of her old world. Waking up in her massive new bed, she wonders why her memory of the novel's finer details is getting so blurry. She questions if it's because of her dreams, constantly doubting if this luxurious new life is actually real. Giving her squishy cheeks a firm pinch, she happily confirms she isn't dreaming. Bursting with energy, she runs into the dining hall and gives Jade a cheerful good morning. Jade gives her a calm, standard greeting in return. Kshin informs them that Callan is out touring a local estate. Ri mentally sweats, knowing full well that touring is just his polite cover-up for going on an absolute killing spree. She wisely decides to keep her mouth shut if she wants to survive. Over the past few days, she's been having breakfast alone with Jade. And like clockwork, he's just sitting there staring at her while she eats. He asks if the food is really that delicious, and she happily nods, glad they are at least on a first-name basis now. He gently suggests she start learning table manners soon, but tells her to take it slow. Curious, she asks if he has time to play today. Jade apologizes, saying he has to stop by the academy. To make up for it, Kshin ties a shiny golden balloon to her wrist. Ri's eyes light up like fireworks, mentioning that street kids only ever saw balloons on super special days. The balloon triggers a flashback to her dad bringing her balloons in the hospital to cheer her up. Tears of joy stream down her face, completely catching Jade off guard. Assuming Jade ordered the gift, she thanks him warmly and he gives her a gentle head pat. Kshin steps in and pours them some high-class milk tea from the Raghul Empire. She takes a tiny sip, instantly obsessed with the sweet flavor. Surrounded by good food and a balloon, she thinks the morning is absolutely perfect. Later, Kshin gives her a walking tour of the Duke's estate, which has the longest history in the kingdom. He points out that the Duke is the only noble to own this much land in the capital. Ri wonders who lives in all the houses, and Kshin explains they are rented out to family members or locals paying off fees. Then Kshin points to an old shrine, strictly warning her to never enter it without permission. Ri shivers, totally aware that's Callan's infamous murder basement. Suddenly, the loud clacking of wheels interrupts the tour. A carriage comes barreling down the path right toward them. Kshin quickly snatches Ri out of the way as the carriage screeches to a halt. The door swings open and Marion steps out looking flawlessly glamorous. Kshin assumes she heard the adoption rumors and Marion smirks, noting that gossip travels faster than the printing press. She immediately starts fussing over Ri like a dramatic reality TV star. She grabs Ri, completely horrified by her basic outfit. She roasts the oversized top and outdated skirt, refusing to let her new niece walk around looking like a peasant. Throwing her hands up, Marion sighs that the staff hasn't bought Ri a proper noble wardrobe yet. After confirming Callan is away on business, she happily declares she's kidnapping Ri for the day. Kshin tries to stop her, but Marion completely ignores the butler and hauls Ri into the carriage. Inside, she asks Ri's age and tells the 9-year-old to drop the formalities and just call her Maria. Maria insists a girl her age needs proper styling, telling Kshin to have Callan meet them at the dressing room later. Defeated, Kshin sighs and hops onto the back of the carriage. Maria gushes over how insanely cute Ri is, making the little girl blush furiously. Trying to make conversation, Ri asks if Maria works at the shrine. Maria casually drops that she's actually the Holy Maiden. Ri's jaw hits the floor as she watches the so-called Holy Maiden casually light up a cigarette like an absolute boss. Maria chuckles at her shocked face, and Ri realizes that despite her wild vibes, Maria is actually a total sweetheart. Looking out the window, Ri spots a glowing toy store and gasps in awe. She remembers how, as a beggar, she'd get aggressively shooed away from places like that. She used to sneak peeks at the magical displays before sunrise, wondering if heaven looked just like that shop. Flashback time, Ri remembers staring longingly at a fancy antique toy store back when she was just a starving beggar. She glances at Maria with big, hopeful eyes, wondering if her new noble status means she can finally go inside and actually touch the dolls. But instead, the carriage pulls up to Seville, the most high-end clothing boutique in the entire capital. Maria explains that since Rhea will be traveling with the Duke, she needs an entirely new wardrobe. Inside, the shopkeepers absolutely lose their minds seeing the Holy Maiden walk through the door. They immediately swarm Maria with their newest silk collections, but Maria redirects their attention to Rhea. Rhea shies away, fully expecting to get shooed out like the old days. When Maria proudly introduces Rhea's family, the clerk awkwardly asks if she should show them the price tags. Maria just smiles and hits them with the ultimate flex, asking if they seriously dare to bring up prices in front of a Llewellyn. The clerk frantically bows in apology, and Maria casually drops 100 gold coins to cover the tab. Rhea quickly does the math and realizes that's the equivalent of 100 million in regular cash. She internally screams, terrified that dropping this much money on a non-blood relative is a huge mistake. She imagines Callan literally punting her out of the estate if she becomes too high maintenance. The sheer anxiety has her slumping over in total depression. Meanwhile, the staff swarm her with gorgeous dresses, and Xin offers to hold onto her precious balloon. He carefully ties it to a window latch so it won't fly away. Maria goes full fashion mogul, rejecting basic designs and demanding only the most expensive princess fits. She spots a gorgeous sample dress in a catalog and tells Rhea to try it on immediately. Rhea excitedly scurries into the changing room. While lacing her up, a maid mentions the royal princess actually ordered this exact same style. Rhea thinks the pink dress is wonderful, but suddenly the door cracks open. Rhea turns around, expecting the staff, but gets startled by a snobby blonde noblewoman named Rose. Rose complains out loud that she almost married the Duke, completely bitter about his new adopted kid. She scoffs at Rhea's commoner background, gossiping about the wild rumors spreading through the city. Rose maliciously plots to ship Rhea off to the countryside, smirking as she calls her an ugly street rat. She even whispers that if the kid is a monster, she should be sold to a circus, making Rhea stare at the floor in sadness. Seeing her looking miserable, a sympathetic maid suggests they step outside for a bit. As Rhea walks toward the door, she feels the heavy, contemptuous shadows of the nobles judging her. She bites her lip, trying to convince herself that everything is going to be all right. When she steps out, Maria claps her hands, absolutely obsessed with the cute dress and begging to get matching outfits. Seeing Maria so happy brings a massive, beaming smile back to Rhea's face. The maid offers her a seat and goes to fetch some water. But when Rhea turns her head to check the window, she realizes something is missing. She completely panics. Her balloon, Jade's very first gift to her, is gone. Without thinking, she runs straight out into the crowded streets to look for it. Suddenly, a creepy hand reaches out from an alley, and a spooky voice comments on her pretty hair. A shady fortune teller violently grabs her arm, demanding 5 silver coins to read her future. Rhea firmly yells that she doesn't need it, yanking her arm away and sprinting down the street. She ducks into a nearby building, peeking back to make sure the creep isn't following her. Looking up, she realizes she accidentally ran straight to the antique toy store she always dreamed of. But right now, she just wants her balloon back. Suddenly, it hits her. She's standing in the middle of the city wearing an insanely expensive, unpaid dress. Knowing she has to get back immediately, she turns around and violently bumps into someone. She falls flat on her butt, groaning in pain. She frantically pats the dirt off her skirt, absolutely terrified of ruining the silk. Tears well up in her eyes as she realizes she's totally lost and has no idea how to get back to the boutique. Just then, a familiar, imposing carriage rolls to a stop right in front of her. It's Callan. He steps out, genuinely confused to see her wandering the streets when she's supposed to be at the fitting room. Rhea immediately bursts into tears, frantically explaining that she lost the balloon Jade gave her and got totally turned around. Callan calls her an idiot and tells her he'll just buy a new balloon, but Rhea is heartbroken because the sentimental value is gone. She wonders how he even recognized her since she's totally made over. Callan smoothly explains he saw something sparkling in the street, just like when they first met, and when he got closer, it was his little angel. Rhea blushes furiously, melting at his sweet words and wondering if this is just how fancy aristocrats flirt. The panicked maid rushes out, apologizing profusely and explaining a guest opened the window, letting the balloon fly away. Right on cue, the snobby noblewoman Rose steps out, fake laughing and claiming she would have booked a restaurant if she knew Callan was coming. Rose spots Rhea in his arms and rudely asks who the kid is. Fanning herself, Rose mocks the adoption rumors and tells Rhea to get used to her since she's going to be her new stepmom. Rhea glares daggers, knowing she's completely full of it. Rose smugly admits the street rat cleans up pretty well. Callan stares her down, totally deadpan, and agrees that Rhea is indeed pretty. Trying to win him over, Rose suggests hiring a super strict tutor to fix the charity case's education. Ignoring her completely, Callan turns to Rhea and asks, "Who am I?" He prompts her to call him father, Ree blushes bright red, so Callan chuckles at her shyness and asks her for a quick favor. He casually asks Ree to tell the annoying woman to get out. Rose is stunned, thinking he's just being indirect. But Callan drops the polite act and absolutely roasts her, bluntly telling Rose to get lost and never speak to him again. He whispers for Ree to say goodbye, confirming the trash has officially been taken out. Ree obediently waves her little hand, dismissing the stunned noblewoman. Callan praises her noble manners, then turns his cold gaze back to Rose, asking if she even knows who he is. Ree quietly observes, thinking she's super lucky she isn't older and pretty, or she'd be forced into political marriages. Or worse, sold to a circus, throwing Rose's earlier insult right back at her. Rose furiously snaps at her for eavesdropping. Callan immediately steps in front of his daughter, warning Rose to back off and reminding her she's standing on his turf. He reveals he literally owns the entire street. He sighs, saying he's disappointed she approached him because he only associates with high-class people. Ree giggles as Callan gently pats her head, completely styling on the clueless noble. Desperate, Rose plays the victim card, crying that they are supposed to be dating. She clings to his sleeve like a desperate ex. Callan physically recoils, asking if sharing a few meals suddenly means they are a couple, calling her totally delusional. He ruthlessly adds that if she really believed they were together, she should consider this him officially dumping her. His eyes glow a terrifying crimson as he threatens to call security, leaving Rose paralyzed with fear. Rose sprints away in tears while Ree awkwardly notes this drama is going to blow up. Suddenly, Maria pops out of the dressing room, surprised to see her brother. Callan immediately calls her out for hiding in there while wearing a 2-week-old dress instead of actually trying clothes on. Maria acts coy, vaguely hinting that ladies use changing rooms for all sorts of sneaky reasons. Callan sighs, telling his sister he wants Ree to see what a massive headache dating is. Maria quickly reminds him that as a holy maiden, romance is strictly off-limits for her anyway. Maria claps back, pointing out he's the one attracting walking red flags like Rose. Callan just smirks, claiming he was the one who got dumped. Callan chuckles at the family banter, but then respots a literal mountain of shopping boxes behind them. Panicking, Ree tries to hit the brakes, stuttering that they absolutely cannot spend this much money on a non-blood relative. Callan asks for the total. Maria casually drops that the budget was 100 gold coins, but she pre-ordered 200 more. Ree's soul nearly leaves her body. Maria insists it's completely necessary for high society parties. Ree tries to argue that 5 dresses are more than enough. Callan just pats her head, smoothly stating it's his duty as a guardian to drop hundreds of millions on clothes she hasn't even tried on. He estimates there are only 20 outfits and tells them to bring more. Ree clutches her head, realizing these rich siblings are totally unhinged. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Ree pulls out her ultimate trump card and fakes a dramatic fainting spell. It works perfectly. Callan immediately tells the staff to just hang the rest up, and Ree mentally gives herself an Oscar for that flawless performance. Maria tries to drag Ree away for more bonding, but Callan shuts it down, saying his sister has zero childcare skills. Walking out, Ree is still bummed about her lost balloon, but suddenly a terrified scream echoes down the street. A woman with messy red hair stumbles out of the shadows and drops dead like a sack of potatoes right at Callan's feet. Callan checks the body and confirms she's gone. Ree is horrified, noting the lack of injuries and guessing it was a sudden heart attack. Callan glances back at her, praising the little genius for her sharp deduction. The police rush to the scene. An officer starts questioning them but immediately starts sweating and apologizing when Callan drops his Duke title. The cop explains the victim is Bennett Allium, a wealthy merchant's daughter, and confirms they suspect a heart attack. Ree peeks out nervously from behind Callan's massive cape, realizing trouble literally follows this family everywhere. The officer bows respectfully as the Duke's grand carriage waits in the background, signaling the end of an absolutely chaotic shopping trip. A grand carriage arrives at the estate, greeted by a line of bowing servants. Inside, the Duke and his new little pink-haired ward discuss the capital's notoriously high crime and death rates. The Duke teases her about being scared, triggering a creepy memory of a fortune teller analyzing her bright hair. The little girl grips her dress tightly, totally spooked by the sudden flashback. They step into the massive mansion, where the blonde butler is completely bewildered that his master just picked up a random kid from the streets. Suddenly, a younger dark-haired boy named Jade walks down the grand staircase to greet his father. He stops in his tracks, startled by the tiny girl hiding behind the Duke. Jade stares at her, looking completely thrown off guard. When he asks what's wrong, she shyly admits she's sad because she lost her balloon. Taking a seat on the steps right next to her, Jade quietly listens to her pout. To her surprise, he gently rubs her head, telling her not to cry over replaceable things and offering to take her sailing. He flashes a gentle smile and offers his hand to walk her to her room so she can rest. Her tears vanish in an instant as she beams the brightest smile at her new big brother. Meanwhile, the Duke sips a drink with his butler, coldly discussing whether the kid will actually be useful to them. He summons a shadowy, dark magic snake from his hand, casually dropping that they can use it to track her immediately. Smirking over his glass, the Duke admits that raising a child is going to be a total headache. Later on, the three of them are hanging out, and the girl is utterly shocked to learn that Jade is only 14 but already drinking wine. The Duke shuts her down, reminding her that she's only half Jade's age and way too young for a glass. She puffs out her cheeks, excitedly declaring that she just wants to grow up already. The Duke casually takes another sip of his dark red wine. But the vibe instantly gets heavy when they start discussing a string of mysterious heart attacks. The Duke explains that 3 different women have died in 3 completely different locations. With a dark smirk, he notes their only connection is that they all had bright red hair. Hearing this, the girl freezes up, gripping her dress as a wave of dread washes over her. The Duke notices her panic and quickly starts pulling off his gloves to check on her. Suddenly, a violent headache hits her like a freight train, sending her into a glitchy, terrifying vision. In her mind, she sees a cloaked figure cornering a red-haired girl from the slums on August 9th. The narration reveals the poor victim is being lured into a deadly trap. The vision flashes to the girl locked in a dungeon cage, while a psycho holding a bloody saw creeps closer to admire her hair. The text states those were the killer's last words before sawing off her hand. She snaps back to reality, gasping for air, and frantically asks the butler what today's date is. It's August 9th. Panic sets in as she realizes today is the exact day the girl from her vision is destined to be murdered. Her mind races, piecing together the lore of a killer who grew up suffocated by his mother's intense obsession. He was completely torn between loving and absolutely despising her. That twisted upbringing totally fried his brain, making him violently obsess over becoming a mother himself. Disguised as a fortune teller, he hands out a beautiful potion to red-haired women who resemble his mom. But the potion is actually a slow-acting poison that triggers a fatal heart attack over time. Putting the pieces together, she realizes the creepy fortune teller she met earlier was the serial killer all along. Without hesitating, she grabs the Duke's shirt and brings up the murder case. The Duke, Jade, and the butler all lean in as she starts dropping absolute facts. She theorizes that all the victims must have visited the exact same fortune teller. She explains that while these fortune tellers live in the grimy slums, they constantly attract wealthy aristocrats. It's literally the only place where high society nobles and poor commoners would ever cross paths. The Duke's eyes light up, totally impressed, and he agrees it's a solid lead worth investigating. But before they can celebrate, the girl suddenly clutches her face as excruciating pain rips through her body. As she collapses like a rag doll against the Duke's chest, he immediately barks orders at his butler to get the investigation guide. Jade rushes over, terrified, as she groans in absolute agony. Her vision blurs to black as she weakly begs for the pain to stop. She slips back into the horrific hallucination, finding herself bleeding out in the metal cage, crying that she'd rather just be killed. Meanwhile, a sinister man holding a bloody document scoffs, questioning if this whole twisted mess is just a red-haired fetish. In her terrifying vision, the bleeding girl watches helplessly as the Duke rushes to her rescue, promising to find a doctor just as a stray arrow flies through the dark. The arrow pierces right through the Duke's chest, and he violently collapses to the ground in a pool of blood. A creepy man stands over their bodies, flashing a sick, twisted smirk. Suddenly, the little girl snaps awake, gasping for air like she just ran a marathon. She shoots up in bed like a spring, absolutely terrified, while the Duke quickly reaches out to steady her. Surrounded by the Duke, the butler Zion, and Jade, she trembles uncontrollably as they ask if she's all right. She covers her mouth in horror, utterly traumatized by the vivid nightmare and questioning if she's losing her mind. Her memories of the original novel start flooding back, reminding her that the arrow meant for the Duke was coated in a lethal poison. In the story, that poison sent him into a deep coma, and even the most famous doctors in the kingdom couldn't wake him up. After a whole month of him being completely unresponsive, opportunistic nobles started swarming the estate gates. While some came to manipulate the young heir, others saw the perfect opening to totally overthrow the Duke's power. Sadly, that's where her knowledge of the future totally ends. In her past life, she literally collapsed and died right while reading that exact chapter. Realizing she might have just triggered this deadly plotline by telling the Duke about the fortune teller, she starts punching her own head in sheer frustration until someone grabs her wrist. She blinks and realizes it's Jade, who gently holds her hands and asks if she's finally fully awake. Zion reminds her to speak up if she feels sick, while trying to shoo Jade off to bed, though the young boy stubbornly refuses to leave. Peeking through her bed curtains, she realizes the three of them have been vigilantly watching over her this whole time. She sits back, totally confused as to why they're all still awake at this crazy hour. Suddenly, Zion hands the Duke a fresh stack of research data that arrived way faster than expected. Glancing at the report detailing the missing red-haired women, she realizes with absolute dread that the Duke is planning to visit the killer's house tonight. Panic completely takes over, and she lunges forward, gripping his shirt to stop him from walking right into a death trap. Her mind races, struggling to find a believable excuse without exposing that she knows the future from her past life's novel. Surprisingly patient, the Duke gently tells her it's okay and urges her to just speak her mind. With tears welling up in her massive green eyes, she tightly grips his dark clothes and begs him not to go. The Duke glances back at the report, finally connecting the dots that the killer is purposely using the slum fortune teller gig as bait to lure him out. Gripping her tiny hands in his, he calmly asks her what's really wrong. She looks up at him, crying her eyes out as she continues to plead for him to stay. The Duke drops the documents, totally softening up, and gently asks the little lady to calm down. She desperately fibs, claiming she had a prophetic dream where he was heavily wounded, and begs him to stay by her side just for tonight. Wiping away her tears, she instantly feels guilty for acting out and wonders if everyone is furious with her. But instead of being mad, the Duke agrees to stay at the manor until she completely stabilizes. He flashes a soft, reassuring smirk, asking why he would ever chase her away. Jade and the butler step in, gently patting the sobbing girl's head as Jade affectionately calls her a crybaby. Their wholesome chuckling is cut short when she suddenly bursts into a violent coughing fit, prompting the Duke to bark orders at Zion for medicine. Wrapped up like a burrito in her blankets, Jade sits beside her asking if she's finally done crying. Zion quickly returns with a pink mug of medicine, but she refuses, stubbornly insisting she's fine as long as the Duke is there. But the moment Zion mentions that an untreated stomach ache could lead to surgery, her face drops in sheer terror. Not wanting any part of an operating table, she aggressively chugs the intensely bitter liquid, looking like she just drank straight poison. Zion praises her while Jade carefully wipes her mouth, making her blush as she insists she can do it herself. The Duke leans in close, teasingly asking if she's just too scared to sleep alone. She defensively slaps the bedsheets, demanding he stay with her today. The three guys share a look, internally melting over how adorable she is and wondering if her little tantrum was meant to be a serious threat. The Duke gently pats the mattress, telling her to lie down and finally get some rest. She shakes her head vigorously, completely terrified that if she falls asleep, the tragic plot will still happen before the night is over. With a heavy sigh, the Duke casually slides into the massive bed right next to her, asking if this is enough. She pouts, insisting she's just resting, before the Duke randomly orders a confused Jade to hop in too. Instantly, her massive green eyes light up with absolute sparkling joy. Now tucked snugly between the two guys, she beams while the butler smiles, turns down the lights, and leaves them to rest. Lying there squished between the Duke and her new big brother, a massive wave of warmth washes over her. Staring up at the ceiling, she wonders how an adopted kid could ever get this lucky, finally letting herself believe that this is her real family. Jade casually points out that she's only getting sleepy because the medicine is finally kicking in, even though she insists she was just wide awake. The Duke lets out a massive yawn while gently patting her chest, fully ignoring her adorable complaints that she was tricked into sleeping. Staring up at the canopy, she murmurs to herself, believing she successfully got a promise out of him to stay put. She quickly drifts off into a deep sleep, innocently planning to wake up early and call the police so the Duke won't get hurt. But cut to the very next morning, the Duke is already up and getting dressed, casually mentioning to Zion that he forgot the research report. Zion offers to retrieve it, amused by how much Jade seems to like the kid, while Jade glares at them from the bed, clearly annoyed by the noise. The Duke smirks, admitting he's actually super interested in her too, finding it hilarious that she gave him top-tier intel and then cried to stop him from using it. Zion mentions a spy the Duke sent ahead, and the two share a dark chuckle over their secret operation. Gripping his gold-handled cane, the Duke looks like an absolute boss, declaring that it's finally time to hunt. Sometime later, bright morning sunlight beams into the bedroom, hitting the sleeping girl's face. She groggily rubs her eyes, mumbling about needing to call the police before the Duke wakes up. Suddenly, the realization hits her like a freight train. She bolts upright, staring at the empty room in sheer panic. She frantically shakes Jade awake, and he sleepily rubs his eyes, casually dropping the bomb that his father left at sunrise. She completely loses her mind, throwing an absolute meltdown and screaming that she shouldn't have trusted an adult. In full panic mode, she grabs Jade by the shoulders and demands to know if he can ride a horse. Her green eyes are dead serious as she tells him she has a massive favor to ask. Jade leans in close, confirming he's a rider, but slyly asks what exactly she's going to do for him in return. Desperate, she begs him to just trust her this once, promising she'll literally do anything for him later. Satisfied for now, Jade pats her head, and she immediately drags him out of the room toward the stables. But the moment they arrive, she freezes completely, her face draining of all color. The horse standing in front of them is an absolute unit, towering over her like a terrifying monster. Jade effortlessly swings himself up into the saddle, looking completely in his element. He reaches down and yanks her up by the arm, pulling her onto the massive beast like she weighs absolutely nothing. In seconds, they burst out of the estate, galloping through the busy streets at breakneck speed. She clings to Jade's waist for dear life, her face turning purple as she screams that she can't hear anything over the wind. Jade leans his head back, yelling to ask if she's all right, and she frantically confirms she is. Pointing fiercely ahead, she navigates him straight toward the third alley to find the killer's hideout. They finally pull up to a creepy, isolated house sitting under a dark, gloomy sky. She hops down and sprints toward the entrance, with Jade following closely, questioning if the Duke is actually even here. He highly doubts it, threatening to take her back, until a heavy thud suddenly echoes from inside the building. Sensing danger, she violently grabs Jade's sleeve, stopping him in his tracks. Jade's expression instantly hardens, demanding to know what she's hiding and what she actually knows about this place. Staring up at him with massive, pleading eyes, she reminds him that he promised to help her no matter what. Defeated by her puppy dog eyes, Jade lets out a heavy sigh and reluctantly agrees to follow her lead. She cautiously cracks open a door, noting how suspiciously quiet the main floor is. Meanwhile, down in the basement, an armed thug is patrolling with a crossbow, proving her theory that the fake fortune teller has backup. She whispers to Jade that if anyone spots them, he needs to run, but Jade just nods, completely confident in his own strength. She reaches for a heavy basement door, totally terrified, while a creepy man smiles from inside a cell below. A sudden noise spooks her, and Jade instinctively pulls her back, while she cries out that she just doesn't want the Duke to get hurt. The perspective drops to the basement floor, where fresh blood drips continuously as a woman with red hair violently chokes. The Duke is standing there, tightly gripping his cane. He is literally suspending the serial killer in midair using a terrifying, shadowy tentacle of dark magic. Hearing them enter, the Duke glances over his shoulder, his red eyes glowing as he demands to know what they are doing there. Jade steps in front of the girl protectively, while the Duke coldly orders his son to take her out so he can finish his business. But she completely ignores him, pushing past Jade and desperately reaching out toward the Duke. Suddenly, the suspended killer's foot twitches, stepping right onto a hidden floor trigger. The girl instantly realizes it's an arrow trap. Time seems to slow down as she completely ignores her own safety, sprinting full speed toward the Duke's back while he's distracted. The hidden crossbow fires, but instead of piercing the Duke, the little girl throws herself right into its path, taking the brutal hit. At that exact second, the Duke's shadow violently crushes the serial killer's face. Jade screams her name in pure horror as she collapses like a ragdoll into the Duke's arms, a lethal arrow lodged directly in her back. The Duke catches the little girl as she collapses, staring in absolute shock at the arrow protruding from her back. She winces in agony, the brutal pain coursing through her tiny body. Holding her tight, the Duke desperately orders her to stay awake and keep her eyes on him. With tears welling up, she weakly mumbles that her shoulders hurt, while Jade looks completely terrified. Suddenly, her vision blurs and her mind flashes back to her past life. She remembers her old parents crying over her just before she was wheeled into the operation room. Snapping back to reality, she weakly reaches up and gently touches the Duke's face, murmuring the word Dad. Tears stream down her cheeks as she softly apologizes to him. The Duke's eyes widen in sheer disbelief as her tiny hand falls from his cheek. She flashes one last, heartbreaking smile before completely passing out, leaving Jade screaming her name. Right on cue, Zion the butler finally arrives, panting and apologizing for losing track of them. But he freezes in the doorway, totally speechless at the horrific scene unfolding. As the Duke holds her lifeless body, a buried memory hits him like a freight train. He remembers his own cruel father, the previous Duke, who constantly called him a cursed monster out of pure hatred. His dad was secretly terrified of Callan's insane magical potential and abused him for it. The only person in the entire world who actually loved little Callan was his mother. Whenever his father beat him like a stray dog, his mom would fiercely wrap her arms around him to shield him from the blows. She would take the hits, whispering that she was always proud of him. The Duke remembers her enduring his father's violent rage, constantly apologizing for being too weak to stop it. When his mother finally died, Callan felt like his entire world had been completely shattered into pieces. Looking down at the bleeding girl in his arms, the Duke realizes he is feeling that exact same soul-crushing despair right now. He stares at the tiny, homeless orphan he adopted on a total whim. His heart aches as he wonders why this child didn't despise him, and instead chose to literally take a bullet to save him. Zion and Jade desperately shout his name, finally snapping him out of his dark trance. The Duke's expression shifts back to absolute ice as he addresses his butler. With a terrifyingly calm voice, he orders Zion to capture the surviving thug, who trembles like a leaf on the floor. He quickly instructs Jade to apply pressure to her wound and secure her mouth so she doesn't bite her tongue. Jade instantly tears his own sleeve apart to use as a gag. The Duke stands up, his eyes glowing red as a massive swarm of dark magic bats erupts from his body. The shadowy bats swarm around the little girl, pouring their dark energy right into her tiny frame. As the magic settles, the Duke notes that the heavy bleeding has finally stopped. He immediately commands Zion to transport her to a secure location. Zion nods, confirming he'll prep a room at one of the Duke's private luxury hotels nearby. Fast forward to a massive suite, where a top-tier doctor is frantically treating the unconscious girl. The Duke stands completely still in the corner, coldly asking for an update on her condition. Sweating bullets, the doctor stammers that while they still need surgery, she has officially passed the critical stage. He nervously adds that the arrow wasn't poisoned and luckily missed her heart. The Duke glares daggers, warning that if she dies, he will literally run every single doctor out of the capital. The doctor completely panics, bowing and promising they will do absolutely everything to save her. Later on, the Duke sits alone by her bedside, watching her sleep peacefully. His mind starts racing, trying to logically process what just went down. Originally, he suspected she was either a spy planted by his enemies or deeply connected to the Phoenix Flower intel group. But seeing her sacrifice herself completely destroys those theories. If it was a trap, she wouldn't have thrown her life away. Gently brushing her hair, he admits he never ever expected her to take an arrow for him. He realizes that even if this is somehow a massive setup, he still wants to love her regardless. His eyes soften, deciding that since she called him father, their fates are permanently tied together. He gently holds her tiny hand, vowing to steal her back from death and fully make her his actual child. But he silently promises that when she wakes up, he is going to raise her to be completely selfish and arrogant, so she won't even blink if someone else gets stabbed. Leaning over her bed, the cold-hearted Duke softly pleads for his little girl to wake up. A team of maids quietly buzzes around the luxurious bed, making sure her environment is absolutely perfect. The Duke asks his butler for an update, and Zion reassures him that she is definitely going to pull through. When asked about Jade, Zion casually mentions the young boy is forcing himself to stay in his room, totally sick with worry until the operation is fully complete. Zion pours a glass of blood-red wine for the Duke, remarking that it's been a long time since he saw Jade acting so emotional. Meanwhile, the Duke asks if the Holy Temple has sent their healers yet. The butler explains that almost all the high-class holy mages are tied up at the palace, but they promise to send someone right after their ritual ends. The Duke takes a slow sip of his wine and coldly orders Zion to deliver a direct, exact message to the Emperor. His red eyes glow like an absolute menace as he threatens that if the mages aren't sent immediately, he will personally march into the palace and make the royals suffer the exact same agony his daughter is feeling. Back in the lavish bedroom, Jade sits anxiously by the unconscious girl's side, quietly murmuring about her looking like a stuffed animal. The scene randomly flashes back to an adorable, fluffy little cat with bright blue eyes. A younger Jade holds the tiny furball, marveling at how incredibly special it looks. The Duke explains that this isn't just an ordinary pet, it's a rare magical creature called a chimera. He drops the heavy lore. A chimera shares a literal life link with its owner. If one gets injured or killed, the other takes the exact same hit. Little Jade snuggles the kitten as his father officially declares him its new master. The Duke strictly warns him to treat the creature as if it were his own body and take perfect care of it. Snapping back to the present, Jade gently presses the unconscious girl's hand against his face, realizing that whole magical bond thing turned out to be a massive lie. He softly caresses her cheek, noting she looks just like his pet Popo when sick, but admits there's a totally different feeling this time. A beautiful, glowing vision of the girl laughing perfectly contrasts with the horrifying memory of her taking that brutal arrow for his father. Jade grips his chin, absolutely drowning in guilt as he questions why he didn't believe in her, and why she'd sacrifice herself when she was already so tiny and fragile. He clutches his chest, completely baffled by the heavy, suffocating feeling crushing his ribs. Gripping the bedsheets tightly, he buries his face in the mattress and painfully admits that his heart is just hurting so bad. Realizing the intense emotion washing over him, he quietly sobs, asking himself if this is actually what crying feels like. Tears stream down his face as he desperately begs the little girl to wake up, missing her bright smile. Suddenly, a soft shifting sound breaks the heavy silence, and her bright green eye finally flutters open. She stares blankly at the ceiling, her foggy mind slowly piecing together that she successfully saved the Duke from the arrow. She tries to speak, but her throat is totally parched, leaving her helplessly mouthing words like a fish out of water. Pure panic sets in as she violently grips her blanket, tearing up and wondering if she died again and respawned in the afterlife. Turning her head to the side, she notices a dark mop of hair resting right next to her on the mattress. It's Jade, completely passed out and softly snoring into his folded arms. She instantly bolts upright, her massive eyes sparkling with pure hype as she realizes she's actually alive. But she tilts her head, totally confused as to why her usually grumpy big brother is sleeping right there. Jade slowly wakes up, flashing a surprisingly gentle, soft smile as he greets his princess, admitting he's been waiting forever. She blinks in surprise before breaking into the most absolutely radiant, heartwarming smile imaginable. Throwing her hands in the air, she celebrates her insane luck, hyping up the fact that she survived and the arrow wasn't even poisonous. Jade quickly shushes her to keep her calm, and she sheepishly points out that she'd be cheering way louder if her voice actually worked. Jade just stares at her, completely dumbfounded by her bizarre, chaotic reaction to nearly dying. Without another word, he grabs a pitcher and quickly pours her a glass of water while she watches in surprise. He gently hands it over, telling her to drink slowly as she aggressively chugs it down like she's been stranded in a desert. Letting out a massive, satisfied sigh, she practically glows with refreshing energy. She casually asks Jade where they are, and he confirms she's safe in the hospital. Standing up, he drops the absolute bomb that the Duke is perfectly fine, but she's been knocked out cold for an entire week. She stares at him with massive, clueless eyes, completely failing to process the massive time skip. Suddenly, Jade turns to the doorway and loudly announces to the hall that she's finally awake. She peeks around Jade's back, totally spooked as a massive crowd of doctors nervously floods the entrance. The doctors completely lose their minds, bursting into happy tears and cheering that they get to keep their lives. Overwhelmed by the chaotic weeping, she awkwardly asks Jade if he somehow ninja snuck past this entire mob to sit with her. When she asks who these crying strangers even are, Jade casually confirms they're just her medical team. The head doctors explain that when they first treated her wound, they thought she'd bounce right back since there was no poison. But then the Duke enters the room, dropping the dark truth. The arrow was actually coated in a heavy sedative that was super hard to detect. Jade steps in, looking dead serious as he explains that because she's so tiny, even a small drop of that tranquilizer was incredibly dangerous. Sweating bullets, the little girl forces a nervous smile and claims she really is just super lucky to be alive. Jade gives her a deadpan stare, totally questioning what exactly is so lucky about getting shot by a tainted arrow in a creepy basement. She awkwardly scratches her head, internally panicking that she could have been in a coma forever, but awkwardly plays it off as just positive thinking. Jade sighs, relenting with a soft smile as he admits her waking up really is magical, while she lets out a massive, cute sigh of relief. The little girl tilts her head, asking Jade why the doctors seemed so relieved that they got to live. Jade reminds her about the Duke's terrifying personality, triggering a flashback of the medical team cheering and ugly crying that they survived the week. Jade explains that while she was unconscious, the Duke angrily paced the halls, threatening to vent his fury on absolutely anyone if she died. Her eyes sparkle, touched by the idea that her scary adoptive dad was actually just super worried about her. Jade doubts it was that wholesome. He reaches under the bed, revealing that he and his father were planning a lucky draw if she didn't wake up today. Pulling out a white box, Jade casually states they were going to randomly pick an incompetent doctor to brutally punish as an example to the others. She stares at the box in absolute horror, totally shook by the insane punishment game. Gripping her bedsheets, she completely panics, realizing they literally meant murder and the doctors were completely innocent. When she asks if those guys were even real doctors, Jade casually drops that they are the 7 most famous physicians in the capital. She asks if the royals agreed to this blatant kidnapping, and Jade implies the royals actually helped summon them. She imagines the kings and queens desperately fawning over the Duke, suddenly realizing how much raw, terrifying power her new dad actually holds. Suddenly, a polite voice interrupts their chat from the doorway. The 7 exhausted doctors stand there looking totally battered, politely asking to run an examination. A doctor carefully checks her vitals with a stethoscope. The head doctor sighs in massive relief, confirming she's fine and promising to return for another checkup later. But before leaving, the doctor leans into Jade to double-check if it's real, then repeatedly bows to the girl, declaring her the luckiest person in the whole kingdom. The completely drained medical team finally excuses themselves from the room. Jade smirks, telling her she's lucky she woke up before the draw, so he'll let the punishment slide this time. Out in the hall, the doctors completely lose their minds, crying tears of pure joy and hugging each other because they didn't get executed. Jade casually shoos them away, but reminds them they still can't go home until the Duke officially gives the green light. Frustrated by all the secrets, the girl violently shakes Jade by his collar, demanding to know exactly what happened while she was knocked out. Jade tells her to chill, while she sits back and aggressively pouts like an angry marshmallow. Starting from the beginning, Jade brings up the fortune teller's grimy hideout. He explains that the house was absolutely rigged with booby traps, including the hidden arrow shooter. The trigger was linked to the killer's ring, turning it to the right instantly fired the crossbow. The serial killer purposely activated it right while the Duke was choking him out in midair. The trap was originally loaded with a highly poisonous arrow designed for a lethal game over. She listens intently, her green eyes wide as she processes the terrifying details. In her head, she confirms this perfectly matches the original novel's plot, where the Duke takes a fatal, poisoned hit. Jade then dives into the sick murderer's actual motive. The psycho was obsessed with his mom, so he disguised himself to hunt down women with the same red hair. It all matches the book's lore, but there's a twisted catch. Jade calls the killer absolute trash, revealing that the tranquilizer dart was exclusively used to capture the women because he didn't think they were worth killing immediately. Hearing that deeply unsettling logic makes her go pale, terrified by how creepy the criminals in this world actually are. Jade gently rubs her head, assuring her it's over because the Duke taught him a lesson, which immediately makes her realize the Duke totally flatlined the guy. When Jade asks if her shoulder hurts, she naively assumes it healed perfectly. Jade shatters that illusion, bluntly stating her shoulder was completely wrecked, bone exposed, and she nearly bled to death. She flinches in pure shock. Jade explains she feels fine because high-tier priests have been burning through rare holy magic to numb her pain for an entire week. She's totally baffled they'd waste such precious magic just for painkillers. Jade brushes it off, saying the priest can just deal with the exhaustion. Suddenly, a beautiful woman bursts in with a peace sign. It's the Holy Maiden. The girl stares in awe, wondering if this is just how stupidly rich people live. Jade softly caresses her hair, warmly calling her thought process cunning. Looking down at her sheets, she realizes that saving the Duke's life was a massive, timeline-altering deal. Jade gently touches her head, his tone shifting to dead serious as he asks why she did something so incredibly stupid, pointing out the tranquilizer wouldn't have even affected his dad. Sweating bullets, she makes up a flimsy excuse about tranquilizers being dangerous if they hit the chest. Jade blinks, then smiles, calling her the bravest person he knows. Blushing furiously, she waves her hands, admitting she just didn't want the Duke, Jade, or Zion to be sad. Jade smiles sweetly at her innocent answer, while she internally decides to stop trying to understand this weird family altogether. Jade leans in and sincerely apologizes for not trusting her intel about the hideout. She instantly turns pale as a sheet. She totally panics internally. How on earth is she supposed to explain that she only knew about the hideout from reading a novel in her past life? Luckily, Jade drops the subject. To escape the awkward tension, she throws an absolute meltdown, flailing around on the bed like a wild animal and screaming that she's starving. Jade dodges her swings and agrees to get food. Left alone, she softly rubs her arms, feeling a wave of cozy gratitude that she's actually alive. But suddenly she wonders, where is the Duke? Jade calls out from the hall that his dad has been home for a while, leaving her completely spooked as she realizes he's on his way. Totally freaking out, the girl violently grabs Jade's sleeve, screaming that the Duke absolutely doesn't need to visit her. Internally, she is losing her absolute mind, completely terrified that the Duke will silence her forever because she watched him flatline that serial killer. Sweating bullets, she awkwardly stammers that His Grace is way too busy to come to the hospital anyway. Jade casually stretches her cheeks like pizza dough, calling her stupid and revealing the Duke actually visited her every single day. She rubs her sore cheeks, totally shocked that her terrifying adoptive dad isn't angry and assumes he's only nice because she saved his life. Jade turns to leave the room, telling her to just explain the accident to their father when he arrives. Left alone, she imagines holding a ridiculous press conference to claim she has fake amnesia, utterly panicking about what to do. She ruffles her own hair in pure frustration, knowing a cheap excuse won't work on a mastermind like the Duke. Meanwhile, in a flashback, the Duke and Zion stand inside a dark, grimy room filled to the brim with red phoenix flowers. The Duke kneels down, demanding to know what the cops did, realizing the scene was completely altered while he was away. Zion quickly calls the authorities as the Duke uncovers a pale, dead hand buried beneath the red petals. The scene shifts outside the creepy hideout, where the police have fully secured the perimeter. The victim turns out to be a young boy who sold flowers on the street. The Duke questions if it's connected to the fortune teller, and a detective confirms the boy was hired to solicit suspicious medicines to noble ladies. Staring blankly, the Duke pieces together that this kid was the killer's main accomplice all along. Suddenly, the mention of a flower boy triggers a massive alarm in the Duke's head. He violently gasps, his eyes widening in pure horror as Zion looks completely lost. The Duke's mind races back to his new daughter's very first day at the mansion. In his memory, the little girl holds up a bright red flower, innocently explaining that someone gave it to her. The Duke completely freezes, realizing the killer's accomplice gave her the phoenix flower. Knowing the serial killer targets anyone connected to those cursed flowers, the Duke spins around in an absolute panic. Leaving the crime scene in the dust, he and Zion full sprint toward their carriage. The Duke barks at his butler to hurry, terrified that his new daughter is the killer's next target. Back in the present, the girl paces in her hospital room, trying to cook up an excuse, when heavy footsteps suddenly echo outside. She completely wimps out and hides behind the bed curtains as the door flies open. The Duke bursts into the room, panting heavily with Zion right behind him. They gasp for air, completely exhausted from rushing over at top speed. Peeking out, the girl gulps, assuming his intense breathing means he's absolutely furious with her. The Duke reaches out and she violently flinches, bracing herself for the worst. But instead of punishing her, the Duke wraps his arms around her and pulls her into a massive, desperate hug. Holding her tight, he softly whispers that Dad is finally here. He gently pulls back, apologizing for being late and admitting he was worried sick about her. She looks down, remembering how in her tragic past life, she always had to fend for herself when she was sick or hungry. Her massive green eyes soften as she finally experiences what it feels like to have a parent genuinely care for her. But a dark thought creeps in, and she shakes her head, terrified of getting used to this warmth in case she eventually gets kicked out. Changing the subject, she nervously asks if he's going to interrogate her for sneaking out at night. The Duke pulls out the red phoenix flower and asks exactly what she knows about it. Playing dumb, she innocently claims it's just a pretty flower she brought to the mansion, completely hiding her knowledge of the novel. The Duke accepts her flimsy answer and sighs, rubbing his forehead as he admits he has a lot to tell her. First, he sincerely thanks her for saving his life, but his gaze turns dead serious as he warns her to never do it again. He gently pats her head, declaring that as her father, it's his absolute duty to protect her, not the other way around. Touched by his fierce protection, she breaks into an adorable, radiant smile, happy he's just acting out of concern. The Duke completely misreads her reaction, totally panicking and yelling at the doctors because he thinks she's zoning out from the pain. She waves her hands to calm him down, but internally wonders why he isn't interrogating her about the murder scene. Unable to hold back, she bluntly asks why he isn't questioning her about who he killed or why they were in that basement. Scratching her cheek, she casually guesses that he only attacked the guy because he was a bad person. The narration confirms she knows the Duke's iron law from reading the novel. He only executes people who commit crimes as bad as his own. Because of that, she firmly believes he doesn't just attack innocent people for no reason. The room goes dead silent as the Duke just stares at her, completely dumbfounded by her unbothered reaction to his dark side. He asks where on earth she came from and if she's scared of him. She smirks and admits he's scary, but asks if he really expected her to just scream and run away. The young girl nervously explains to the Duke how she managed to track him down to the fortune teller's house. He tightens his grip, listening intently as she admits she felt she had no other choice. She reveals that she saw the confidential papers he accidentally left behind in her room. Looking down at the scattered documents, she wonders why Callan always leaves case clues lying around like a breadcrumb trail. Callan is genuinely caught off guard, realizing she actually looked through the reports on the red-haired women. He raises an eyebrow and immediately asks if she even knows how to read. She admits she can't read a single word but has a photographic memory, remembering the signs near her old, gloomy neighborhood where the fortune teller lived. Because of that, she easily recognized the familiar symbols repeating on his secret papers. Getting defensive, she confesses she was terrified the creepy fortune teller might actually eat him, so she woke up Jade to help search. Callan just stares at her, absolutely stunned by her big brain deductions. He realizes this tiny kid completely cracked his ongoing investigation all by herself. He pats her head, praising his smart daughter, but firmly tells her to never pull a dangerous stunt like that again. Then he brings up the strange red flower she was holding when she first arrived at the palace. She nervously looks down, immediately sensing a shift in the vibe. Callan explains that the flower actually belongs to a seriously evil guy. She stares blankly, completely clueless about the villain's identity. He reveals that this specific red flower is a calling card left behind at brutal murder scenes. And wild enough, even Callan hasn't been able to figure out who the killer is. She starts sweating bullets, terrified that the murderer purposely gave her the flower. Her mind spirals as she wonders if Callan only adopted her because she was holding that bloody clue. She genuinely likes her new family but feels completely lost in the sauce. Seeing her panic, Callan gives a soft smile and praises her quick wits. He admits he was suspicious at first, but now he just sees her as his little savior who magically fixes his problems. He reassures her that she has absolutely nothing to worry about anymore. Then Callan drops a massive lore bomb, sharing his deepest secret with her. He casually admits that he operates outside the law to punish the bad guys the police can't touch. He leans in closely, making sure she grasps the heavy weight of this information. He smirks and tells her that since she knows his secret, she's officially locked into the family and can never run away. Suddenly, his expression softens and he asks her a very serious question. He demands to know what he means to her, completely catching her off guard. Blushing fiercely, she timidly looks up and calls him her father. Callan absolutely melts, getting completely flustered while trying and failing to play it cool. The wholesome moment breaks when his assistant mentions that Jade stayed up the entire night watching over her. The Duke jokes about her talent for enchanting the household and orders Zion to wake Jade up. Without warning, he scoops her right up into his arms, ready to finally head home. Outside, they are greeted by a massive, colorful bunch of floating balloons against the blue sky. Jade hands her a balloon, leaving her completely starstruck. She gives a massive, beaming smile, hugging the balloon and thanking them for the sweet gift. But Callan isn't done, casually offering to stop at the toy store. He explains that he saw her staring pitifully through the glass the last time they were out. He remembers watching her quietly envy a kid walking into the shop with their parents. Coming from the harsh streets, a toy store was a luxury she could only dream of. He stands tall in front of the shop, ready to absolutely spoil her rotten. He tells her if she doesn't know what to buy, she can literally just purchase the entire shop. She absolutely short-circuits, screaming in pure disbelief. The assistant coughs and hilariously exposes Callan, revealing he already bought the entire store as a prepayment because he couldn't pick a single toy. Callan awkwardly looks away, getting totally called out for having zero gift-giving skills. Jade chimes in, remembering a time Callan supposedly bought him a soldier teddy bear. But the assistant ruthlessly snitches again, revealing the butler actually picked it out because Callan's default gifts are just swords. Jade drops the final nuke, reminding Callan that his real idea of a gift was locking him in a cell with a venomous snake. Father of the Year, no cap. She is absolutely shook that Callan has never bought Jade a birthday present in his entire life. The assistant leans in and whispers that the Duke is notoriously terrible at picking gifts for kids. Callan grumbles in the background, complaining about why he had to choose a smaller teddy bear instead of the giant one everyone else scouted. She realizes Callan never got gifts from his own dad, mostly because he didn't want to seem needy. Trying to cheer him up, she sweetly tells him the teddy bear will chase away his nightmares, though Callan tries to brush it off as silly superstition. But she doesn't stop there, loudly declaring that on scary nights, he can come into her room and hug her since he doesn't have a bear. Callan and his assistants are left completely speechless by her overwhelming cuteness. Callan gently pats her head, awkwardly reminding her that she's supposed to be the patient here. His protective instincts go absolutely feral, and he jokes that he wants to bite her because she's just too adorable, which totally freaks her out. Changing the subject, Zion offers to go to the toy store to grab her anything she wants while she's recovering. Callan chimes in, insisting they should just buy the whole store, boldly claiming he'll buy her endless presents as she grows up. She quickly turns to him and says she doesn't need a whole store, she only wants the doll he personally picked out for her. Callan's cold exterior completely melts as he asks if she's really happy with his choice. He gently kisses her forehead, promising to always pick the best things for her, leaving her smiling from ear to ear. They finally head back to the estate, their carriage trailing a massive bunch of colorful balloons. But back at the mansion, she's already bored out of her mind lying in her giant bed. Zion firmly nags her, ordering her not to leave the bed until the doctors and priests arrive to check her condition. As soon as he leaves, she sits right up, realizing she actually feels zero pain thanks to the priest's healing magic. Complaining that her stomach hurts from lying around too much, she decides to slowly slide out of bed. She takes it step by step, inching her way toward the massive balcony doors. But her body still feels heavy, making her huff and puff like she just ran a marathon. Reaching the window, she stares out in awe at the glowing night sky. She realizes it's the minus moon, the one night of the year when the moon appears the absolute largest. Her mind drifts back to the ongoing investigation, realizing she can't help Callan anymore because she's exhausted all her knowledge from the original book. She stares blankly, wondering who the real mastermind behind the crimes could be. She remembers the novel illustrating Callan's brilliant detective work, but something about the guy sending the red flowers gives her major bad vibes. She recalls a crucial detail, The killer used a rare, tasteless, and odorless poison. It makes no sense for a poor country fortune teller to afford something that expensive. Looking out into the night, she wonders if Callan has already pieced that clue together. She suddenly remembers Callan proudly telling her to call him father from now on. She admits to herself that she's always dreamed of having a real dad to protect her. After being alone for so long, having a warm family feels like a fever dream she doesn't want to wake up from. But her anxiety starts creeping in, terrifying her that if she becomes useless, he might get annoyed and throw her away like a broken toy. She violently shakes her head, snapping out of her dark thoughts. Clasping her hands together, she prays to the moon, promising she won't be greedy. She just wishes that this beautiful, peaceful life will continue to bless her. Meanwhile, in a dark location, a mysterious man orders his lackey to leave a body in an obvious place to cause maximum trouble. The villain smirks, noting that the rare poison was definitely too much for a lowly fortune teller to handle, confirming her big brain suspicions. Under the giant minus moon, the cloaked assassin bows to his boss and heads out. The villain lounges in the dark, casually talking about building a criminal profile like it's a twisted game. He reveals he knows all about the Duke adopting a 9-year-old girl, realizing the red flowers he sent were probably the very first flowers she ever received. He sinisterly wonders how the kid will survive the Duke's chaotic family, calling her an interesting experiment. Holding a dark flower to his face, he smirks, eagerly looking forward to their inevitable showdown. The next morning, sunlight streams in as birds chirp, waking her from a deep sleep. Her eyes flutter open, immediately noticing something soft right next to her face. She shoots up in bed, absolutely thrilled to find a cute teddy bear sitting beside her. She happily smashes her face against the plushie, loving how soft and beautiful it is. But as she inspects it, she pauses, noticing the bear has 2 different eye colors, one red and one blue. Then she spots a mysterious black envelope resting exactly where the bear was. Assuming it's a sweet letter from Callan, she lights up with joy, clutching the bear closely. Without missing a beat, she bolts out of the room to find Zion to read it, completely oblivious to the villainous vibes of that envelope, no cap. Zion and a maid suddenly turn their heads, hearing tiny footsteps echoing down the hall. The little girl comes sprinting toward them in her nightgown, happily holding up her new teddy bear and the black envelope. Zion completely panics, telling her to stop running before she opens her wounds, but she just laughs it off. With a soft smile, Zion explains that the bear is a very old, special present prepared by Master Callan. She excitedly hands him the dark envelope, asking if he can read the letter inside for her. Zion opens it up, his eyes scanning the page before a warm smile spreads across his face. He gently suggests that she should ask the Duke to read it himself, hinting that it's something he's wanted to give her for a long time. But she looks up in pure surprise, realizing the letter is actually about giving her a real name. Her mood instantly drops as she sadly admits she doesn't want to lose the simple name, Le, that her mom gave her. Suddenly, Callan appears out of nowhere like a ghost, startling them both as he orders Zion to just read the paper. The Duke gives a proud smirk, demanding his assistant read it nice and loud for the birthday girl. Zion starts sweating bullets, clearly feeling awkward about what he's about to do. He starts reading in the most deadpan, robotic voice ever, pretending to be the teddy bear asking for a name. Callan bursts out laughing, roasting Zion for having zero emotion while the girl just stares in utter confusion. Zion clears his throat and gets to the good part, revealing her beautiful new name, Letitia, which means a sky filled with thousands of moons. The cheesy letter continues, with the bear promising to protect Letitia from nightmares with its shining eyes. She hugs the bear tightly, deeply moved by the hidden meaning behind the words. She realizes Callan kept her original street name, Le, right at the start of her new one to honor her past. She used to be just another nameless orphan born on a Monday, but now her new dad is giving her the entire moonlit sky. Zion finishes reading the letter, gently asking if she likes her new title. He then hilariously coughs into his glove, totally calling Callan out for writing something so incredibly cheesy. Callan ignores him and leans in, softly asking his new daughter if the name suits her. He admits he tried really hard to pick the perfect one since their first meeting felt like a literal dream. Zion chimes in, suggesting that today should officially become her birthday to mark the start of her brand new life. Callan looks at her with the softest expression, officially wishing Letitia a happy birthday. Her face turns completely red, absolutely overwhelmed by all this sudden fatherly affection. Instead of crying, she instantly deflects and announces she's going to show the bear to Jade, leaving Callan totally dumbfounded. She books it down the hallway like a track star, leaving the 2 men standing there in awkward silence. She tightly clutches her bear, running as fast as her little legs can carry her. Bursting into the bedroom, she loudly wakes up a very sleepy Jade. She proudly announces her new name and flexes that today is officially her birthday. Jade gives a sleepy but genuine smile, agreeing that Letitia suits her perfectly while realizing Callan planned this whole surprise behind his back. But as she looks closer at her plushie, she suddenly notices something crazy about its eyes. She hands the bear over to Jade so he can inspect it. He casually points out that the red eye is a literal ruby and the blue one is a pure sapphire. She sits on the bed, her brain completely short-circuiting from the sheer value of her toy. Her face drops in absolute horror as she realizes she's casually been holding a fortune. Later at dinner, the expensive bear sits quietly on her lap. She fiercely glares at Callan, lecturing him about buying her such flashy things and worrying she'll grow up to be a spoiled brat. Callan casually cuts his steak, telling her he'd actually love it if she grew up to be so incredibly vain that nobody else could stand her. She stares at him wide-eyed, completely baffled by his logic. He smirks like a supervillain, explaining that if everyone else hates her, she'll have no choice but to stay with him forever. She sits there speechless, realizing her dad is playing 4D chess to keep her around. With a soft chuckle, Callan promises that the gem bear will be her last ridiculously expensive toy. Suddenly, the most glorious strawberry-covered birthday cake appears. Zion places it on the table, and Letitia immediately pops out of her seat, practically glowing with happiness. Right on cue, a whole squad of maids starts rolling in to join the party. The entire manor staff gathers around, warmly wishing her a happy first birthday in her new home. She blushes furiously, clutching her bear as her heart completely melts. Jade and Zion look at her with warm smiles, officially cementing this as the most wholesome found family moment, no cap. Callan smiles warmly, officially wishing Letitia a happy 10th birthday. She literally gasps, her eyes sparkling with pure, unadulterated joy. Celebrating with Zion and the head maid, she realizes this is her first real birthday. Looking at her new family, she reflects on how she was completely reborn as Letitia. She digs into her cake, knowing she will never forget this joyful moment. Meanwhile, a flashback takes us back to a snowy winter night at a premium toy store. Callan stares blankly at a soldier teddy bear, heavily doubting his own gift choice. Zion tries to reassure him, saying the young master will appreciate it just because the Duke picked it out. Suddenly, they notice a group of street kids scrambling away from the store window. Zion assumes the shopkeeper chased them off with a whip to prevent stealing, which is unfortunately common. But Callan notices a tiny girl, Letitia, before she was adopted, hiding and peeking around the corner. Her big green eyes stare longingly at the brightly lit toys she can never have. Callan watches her, a solemn expression crossing his face. Without missing a beat, he hands Zion a gold coin and orders him to pay the shopkeeper to keep the window lights on all night. He abruptly turns around, making the excuse that Jade would probably just throw the bear away anyway. Zion looks completely confused by the sudden change of plans but respectfully agrees. Thanks to Callan's secret kindness, little Letitia gets to press her face against the glass, absolutely mesmerized by the glowing display. Fast forward to the present, the intense case of the redhead fortune teller is finally closed. Letitia has spent the entire past month recovering inside the massive manor. Since she's grounded until her wounds fully heal, she locks in and focuses on learning how to read. Her life has completely leveled up, with Aunt Maria filling her closet with gorgeous designer dresses. As the winter snow falls heavily outside, the maids help Letitia slip into a beautiful floral outfit. Maria completely fawns over her, absolutely losing her mind over how cute Letitia looks. Standing proudly in her new dress, she looks completely unrecognizable from the muddy orphan who first arrived. Letitia is practically buzzing with excitement since she's going on her very first boat trip today. Maria gently checks her recovery progress, and Letitia confirms she feels excellent and is ready to hang out with Jade. The older woman strictly tells her to come back immediately if she feels even a tiny bit of pain, to which Letitia eagerly nods. With the final touches done, Letitia smiles brightly in the mirror, thanking Maria for making her look so pretty. As Maria compliments her, Letitia secretly feels a bit sad, knowing that as a holy maiden, Maria can never marry and must be lonely. Letitia sweetly declares she wants to grow up and be just like her, completely flustering the holy maiden. She praises Maria's beautiful face and perfect soul, making the older woman blush hard. Maria aggressively hugs her like a plushie, joking about where this little angel came from, though she hilariously tells Letitia to ignore her drinking habits. Right as Jade walks in, Maria is loudly preaching about how wine brings everyone happiness. Letitia looks up, hopefully asking if Maria is going to join them on the boat. Maria gives her a sweet kiss on the forehead, explaining she unfortunately has a temple event to attend. As Letitia heads out with Jade, she narrates that she had absolutely no idea just how wild this highly anticipated picnic was about to turn out. Jade takes her out on a gorgeous, crystal-clear river, steering a small wooden boat. Letitia is absolutely beaming, completely enchanted by the stunning autumn scenery. She mentions it would be even better if the Duke had come, but Jade reminds her he had a boring national meeting. A quick flashback shows Callan looking low-key devastated that he couldn't skip work to join them. Suddenly, some loud guys on a passing boat aggressively wave, shouting and asking if they're heading to Lennox Island. Jade instantly looks annoyed, clicking his tongue as he realizes these guys are crashing his peaceful trip. The guys wave like absolute maniacs, prompting Letitia to ask if Jade actually knows them. Jade lazily waves back, brushing them off as some annoying upperclassmen he only hung out with once. The loud boat speeds past them, zooming off into the distance. Watching them leave, Letitia suddenly turns to Jade and asks the real question. Why hasn't she seen him go to the academy once? Jade casually drops that only normal people go every day for roll call, and since he absolutely crushes his exams, he doesn't need the attendance points. He casually flexes that their family consists of rare pure-blooded wizards, so he can just study at the magic tower instead. Letitia immediately thinks he's capping. Then Jade hits her with the ultimate betrayal. He admits he's actually been skipping class to play with her, making her his official accomplice in truancy. Letitia's soul absolutely leaves her body. Letitia trails her hand in the sparkling river water, daydreaming out loud about attending the Magic Academy someday. But she quickly brushes it off, admitting the fees are way too high and she shouldn't be greedy since living at the Duke's manor is already a massive blessing. She laughs brightly, teasing Jade that his skipping class is a terrible influence on her. Jade just shrugs, smoothly arguing that being exceptionally smart is just as good as being sincere, before reminding her she still struggles with basic reading. Letitia proudly puffs out her chest, flexing that she can finally write her own name perfectly. She holds up her finger like a little scholar, adding that she even learned how to write his and Callan's names too. Flashing a massive, beaming smile, she promises to write Jade his very own letter soon. Jade completely breaks his cool exterior, holding back a laugh because he finds her absolutely hilarious. Letitia instantly pouts, glaring at him and demanding he stop teasing her. Changing the topic, Jade asks if there's anyone from her past life she wants to reunite with now that she's a noble. She softly mentions her old street friend, Walter, who used to help her survive. But she shakes her head, explaining they made a strict promise never to acknowledge each other if they crossed paths on the street. She explains it's a well-known survival rule for orphans. If one of them makes it to a better place, they have to pretend to be total strangers so the past doesn't drag them down. A quick flashback shows the harsh alley life where Walter shared his scraps of bread with her. Now, wrapped in a warm coat, she smiles up at the sky, incredibly grateful to Jade and the Duke for saving her from freezing in the winter. Jade tilts his head, catching her in a lie since she claimed her alley was very warm during her adoption interview. Letitia starts sweating bullets, awkwardly looking away and admitting she just said that to sound tough for the interview. Jade suddenly leans in extremely close, locking eyes with her. He gently tells her she doesn't need to keep thanking him because his home is officially her home now. He flashes a rare, soft smile as she stubbornly insists on showing her gratitude anyway. She formally thanks him for coming to her house that day and changing her life. Looking up at him with sparkling eyes, she thanks him for getting healthier and taking the time to hang out with her. Her heart swells with warmth, completely overwhelmed by her new family. Without warning, she throws her arms around him in a tight hug, happily declaring she loves having him as a brother, leaving Jade completely stunned. The wholesome vibes carry them all the way to Lennox Island, where Jade steers their small boat onto the sandy shore. Letitia hops out, completely starstruck by the massive, beautiful landscape. She practically drags Jade by the sleeve, though he gently reminds her not to overexert herself since she's still a recovering patient. She gasps in awe, inhaling the sweet scent of a massive bush of blue roses, a super rare flower that only blooms 3 times a year. Jade smirks, revealing he planned this trip perfectly to avoid the crowds, but warns her not to touch the sharp thorns. Letitia spins around the empty garden, wondering why no one else is here to see such a precious sight. Jade casually drops that the roses have some seriously bad rumors surrounding them. He touches a bright blue petal, explaining the dark myth that the flower's poison makes people go crazy or die. Letitia freezes in pure horror, staring at him as he explains the horrendous legend of the island. But she breathes a massive sigh of relief when he admits it's just a silly superstition, kind of like scary urban legends about sleeping with fans on. She gently taps a leaf, wondering how something so gorgeous could get such a creepy reputation. Jade deadpans that they have found mystery dead bodies hidden in the bushes twice before. Letitia absolutely scrambles to hide behind his back like a frightened turtle. Peeking out in pure terror, she listens as Jade finally explains the actual science behind the flowers. He reveals that buried magic stones temporarily mutate the rose's color, but before people knew that, they just assumed it was deadly poison. Suddenly, Zion calls out from the trees, announcing that their picnic lunch is finally ready. But when they arrive, they run straight into those loud, annoying Academy seniors who waved at them earlier on the river. Jade gives them the coldest side-eye imaginable, dryly mentioning he brought his little sister to see the flowers. The three aristocratic guys are completely shook, having zero clue Jade even had a sister. Still hiding behind Jade's coat, Letitia silently panics, terrified of young noblemen because of her past trauma with street thugs. But gathering her courage, she decides she should at least peek out and be polite since Jade introduced her. Jade has absolutely zero interest in chatting and immediately tries to walk away to leave them alone. But the red-haired guy playfully pats Jade's shoulder, insisting his rigid friend let the little lady say hello. With a deep breath, Letitia peeks out from under her massive sun hat, clutching her teddy bear and softly introduces herself. The three nobles take a critical hit straight to the heart, absolutely melting on the spot from the cute aggression. They furiously whisper to each other, completely obsessed and wondering how the scary Duke family ended up with such an insanely adorable girl, no cap. The polite guy smiles warmly and introduces himself as Leon. Letitia stares at him, feeling a weird sense of déjà vu like she's seen him somewhere before. The energetic redhead bows next, introducing himself as Percy, a third year on Jade's student council. Suddenly, the blonde guy, Zax, completely slides in, grabbing her hand and calling her an angel. He smoothly lands a gentle kiss right on the back of her hand. Jade is absolutely not having it, instantly swatting Zax away and swinging Letitia behind him like a ragdoll to shield her. Percy bursts out laughing at the overreaction, while Jade firmly warns them they'll be in big trouble if they touch his sister. Zion bows out respectfully, promising to pick them up later. Letitia happily munches on a sandwich, totally loving the picnic vibe. Jade aggressively pours tea, glaring at the seniors and telling them to drink up and leave because he wanted alone time with his sister. Percy totally whines, calling Jade cold for trying to kick them out of their impromptu hangout. Zax reminds Percy he warned him not to come because of the cursed blue roses. Meanwhile, Letitia keeps chewing, still trying to figure out why Leon looks so familiar. Leon just gives her a warm, gentle smile. Zax decides to start spilling the tea, asking if he should tell her about Jade's embarrassing academy moments. He brings up a specific time Jade fell asleep while everyone was getting scolded during a terrifying student council ceremony. Jade glares hard, ordering the seniors to keep quiet. But Letitia cracks up laughing, and seeing her so happy instantly melts Jade's annoyance into a soft smile. Percy enthusiastically suggests bringing Letitia along for the academy tour day. Jade completely shuts it down, brutally saying annoying fleas might cling to her if she goes. The guys start chatting, praising Leon as the best among them, though Leon humbly redirects the praise right back to Jade. Percy mentions Leon actually used to be super awkward and quiet at Jade's age before suddenly becoming cheerful. Leon smiles, crediting his transformation entirely to Percy and Zax for being such great friends. The seniors get excited, playfully fighting over whose family gets to host Letitia's social debut ball. Jade firmly pulls her close, stating he and his father will decide that. Letitia looks up, asking if that means she can't go anywhere. Jade softly tells her she can go wherever she wants when she's older, as long as it's safe. She flashes a massive, happy smile, totally understanding his protective older brother vibe. Percy literally tears up, absolutely clutching his heart over how impossibly cute she is. He and Zax are completely mind-blown, seeing the normally cold, poker-faced Jade act so soft and caring around his family. Letitia just giggles at their banter, happy to see this side of Jade. Suddenly, Leon excuses himself, saying he wants to pick some blue roses for his little sister who used to love them. The atmosphere instantly drops and Percy and Zax completely freeze. Percy offers to go with him, but Leon politely declines, saying he'll be right back. Zax tries to awkwardly force a laugh about the fake rose poison myth to lighten the heavy mood. Letitia innocently asks Percy if Leon is okay, and Percy gives a sad smile, assuring her he's fine. He then reveals the heartbreaking truth. Leon's little sister passed away last year, and he's picking flowers for her grave. He drops a massive bombshell. The late sister, Elise, was actually Percy's fiancée. He fondly remembers her as a very sweet girl who grew up in the countryside. Letitia realizes Elise must have been sick, relating it to her own tragic past life on the streets. Leon silently looks back at them from the flower bushes, sensing the solemn mood. Percy finishes the story, revealing she died of pneumonia. Jade stays completely silent, watching Letitia's reaction. Leon returns with the beautiful blue roses, immediately noticing Letitia's teary eyes. He figures out Percy told her everything and explains that Elise always wished to see blue roses. He tips his hat, apologizing for bringing down the happy picnic mood. He mentions finding a box of her old blue belongings while sorting things out yesterday. Smiling softly, he tells Percy he's truly grateful that Percy hasn't gotten engaged to someone else yet. Percy tightly clenches the roses, declaring his rich family's money means nothing compared to his first love. He adds that he's the one who should be grateful, since Leon's family didn't take back the engagement money, saving Percy's family from financial ruin. Zax pops a light bulb idea, suggesting they all go visit Eliza's grave together from now on. Leon smiles brightly, agreeing she'd absolutely love it if Percy brought her flowers. Letitia watches them, deeply touched by how beautiful their unbreakable bond is despite the tragedy. Trying to cheer things up, Leon asks Letitia if she has any questions about living in the capital, but she awkwardly rubs her head and admits she's never actually been there. Leon smoothly changes the subject, reminiscing about the first time he traveled from the countryside to the capital. He remembers the tiled floor of the station tinted red by the evening sunset. He describes his nervousness stepping into the grand station, hearing the blue clock tower's bell and seeing pigeons flying in the sky. He smiles warmly, calling it a true honor to spend his teenage years in such a beautiful place. Letitia giggles, pointing out that her old, dirty alley in the capital definitely didn't look like that, but she still loved the clock tower. She completely lights up, admitting his stories just make her want to travel the world even more. Jade gives a soft smile, genuinely glad he brought her out of the manor to have fun. The warm breeze makes Letitia sleepy, and she yawns loudly, wanting to take a quick nap right on the grass. But her expression drops slightly as she asks Jade not to leave without her, admitting she's terrified this perfect life is just a fragile dream. She fears one little mistake will send her straight back to the harsh streets. Jade gently pats her hat, reassuring her that will never happen. Feeling totally safe, she smiles and pulls her hat down for a snooze. Later, she wakes up rubbing her eyes, asking Jade how long she was out. Meanwhile, Percy sips his drink but suddenly spots someone approaching. It's Callan, the Duke himself has arrived at the island with Zion and the maids. Letitia absolutely springs to her feet, totally surprised to see her father. Callan warmly thanks the servants for bringing him, telling them to enjoy their vacation. The Academy seniors watch in awe as Callan immediately lifts Letitia up into a huge hug, asking if she had fun. Letitia gives him a suspicious side-eye, teasingly asking if he used a fake excuse to ditch his important parliament meeting. Callan totally melts, whining that she's the only reason he would rush all the way out here. Suddenly, a wine glass drops. The three seniors are on their knees, completely paralyzed with fear. Letitia asks to be put down as Callan shoots a terrifying glare at the boys. He coldly asks Jade who these randoms are. His fatherly overprotection hits max level as he demands to know why these flies are hanging around his daughter. Then he spots the wine bottle on the picnic blanket, and the seniors absolutely gasp for air. They jump up, sweating buckets, frantically promising they were just drinking tea and wouldn't dare bother the young lady. Callan stares them down, coldly ordering them to introduce themselves. Percy stammers out his name while Jade quickly runs interference, explaining they're just upperclassmen he bumped into. Callan gives the most menacing, bright smile ever, asking Jade if these guys are vermin. Jade plays along, smirking and saying they don't need to be exterminated just yet. Letitia shivers, horrified that they're casually discussing murder with a smile. Callan laughs it off as a joke, blaming his extreme protective streak on his daughter being too pretty. Jade changes the subject, asking how Callan escaped his meeting so early. Callan claims the king wasn't paying attention, so the meeting ended early, but Jade completely calls cap on that excuse. Callan turns back to the terrified seniors, asking what they were talking about before he arrived. Letitia notices the boys look like they are fighting for their lives, caught between wanting to impress the Duke and being scared to death. Percy totally dips, excusing himself to get some fresh air and sober up. The remaining two go full suck-up mode, asking Callan about his magic business and student council days with sparkling eyes. Letitia watches them, innocently asking Callan if Percy ran off because he felt sick. Callan asks if she's curious about his past, and she eagerly nods, wanting to know everything about him. He agrees to tell her the stories, but just as he starts, Letitia lets out a loud, adorable sneeze. Callan's dad instincts instantly activate, wrapping his coat around her and declaring it's time to go home. Leon quickly offers to signal the servants with his pocket mirror. Suddenly, a loud splash echoes from the river. Letitia whips her head around. Leon smoothly plays it off, claiming the island just has a lot of jumping kingfisher birds. A servant's boat quickly approaches the shore, confirming they caught the signal. Leon suggests they head back since Percy is probably just drunk somewhere in the bushes. Callan realizes he hasn't seen the famous blue roses yet, and Letitia jumps up, excitedly offering to show him. She proudly leads her dad toward the bushes, boasting about how mesmerizing they are. But suddenly she stops in her tracks, staring blankly ahead. She turns back, utterly confused as both Callan and Jade instantly drop their smiles, staring down at something with deadly serious expressions. Jade immediately pulls Letitia into his chest, covering her eyes and telling her not to look. But she peeks anyway, completely freezing as she spots Percy lying lifeless in the bed of blue roses. Jade takes a few cautious steps forward, wondering out loud if it's a suicide. But Callan is already casually chilling next to the body, inspecting the bloody dagger. Letitia flinches hard, swearing she just saw her dad smirk at the crime scene. Callan calmly orders Jade to walk 10 steps away and yell to alert the others, playing it completely cool. Jade follows the plan without hesitation, sprinting off to grab the upperclassmen. Hearing the shout, Leon and Zax absolutely jump out of their skin. Letitia plays her role perfectly, pointing frantically toward the bushes like a terrified kid. The two seniors rush over and drop to their knees in pure shock. They note the sliced wrist and the dagger, making the whole thing look like a textbook suicide. Zax is completely in denial, grabbing Jade and arguing that Percy had way too bright of a future to end it all. He grits his teeth, pointing out that they were all together on this isolated riverbank, so no one else could have done it. Letitia silently watches the drama unfold, wondering if Zax is purposely trying to push the suicide narrative. Leon clenches his fists, crying as he blames himself for bringing up his dead sister and reopening Percy's trauma. But Letitia's brain is working in overdrive. She knows suicide is spontaneous, but why do it right now when he was just cracking jokes a minute ago? Callan asks if she's scared. She shakes her head, mostly just upset because this murder completely derails the novel's original plot. Suddenly, Zax turns around and Loki accuses Callan, pointing out that the Duke's family were the ones who found the body. Callan just smirks, amused that these kids are bold enough to accuse him of murder right to his face. He casually drops a forensic nuke, stating the blood is completely dry, meaning Percy died at least 30 minutes ago, right when Leon was sending his mirror signal. Callan shrugs it off, saying the police will handle it, leaving everyone sweating bullets. Letitia stares at the two mourning friends, her gut screaming that this definitely isn't a suicide. She clenches her fist, wondering why she feels so absolutely certain about it. Noticing her intense focus, Callan asks if she's hurting somewhere. He sits her down and gently places a hand on her forehead to check her temperature. But the moment he touches her, her vision completely glitches out. She gets hit with a crazy flashback, seeing a girl in a blue dress playing hide and seek. Then a dizzying, kaleidoscopic vision of a boy's laughing face floods her mind. She snaps back to reality, absolutely startled. Callan assumes the corpse just traumatized her and promises they'll leave as soon as the cops wrap up. Letitia is totally bewildered, realizing she just had a full-blown hallucination while wide awake. Callan tells her to rest as soon as they get home, and Jade firmly agrees. But Letitia's detective mode is fully activated. Lennox Island is totally secluded, meaning no random killer could have docked a boat without them noticing. Callan jokes the culprit might be a mermaid, completely unbothered by the chaos. Letitia pieces it together. Either someone was hiding here from the start, or the killer is literally standing right next to her. She glares at the seniors, realizing the culprit made a massive mistake crossing paths with the Duke. They basically signed their own death warrant. Zax babbles on about how Percy's elite swordsmanship made it easy for him to cut his own arteries in one go. Letitia points out how Callan always gets caught up in weird incidents, but he smoothly brushes it off as mere coincidence. Finally, Detective Sheldon arrives on the scene, and Letitia immediately recognizes him from her past. Sheldon respectfully bows, clearing them to leave after taking their statements. Callan grabs Letitia's hand, ready to completely dip from the crime scene. Zax dramatically wipes a fake tear, saying they'll be taking their leave too. But Letitia abruptly pulls on Callan's sleeve, pointing out how pitiful Leon looks. She insists they should give Leon a ride home to offer condolences, perfectly playing the innocent, concerned sister. She argues that leaving the two seniors together will just cause them to blame each other. Callan praises her kindness and instantly orders Leon into their carriage. Leon and Zax are utterly confused, but Letitia knows this is the only way to save Leon from being left alone with the real killer. She glances back, completely confident in her big brain deductions. Leon awkwardly tries to decline the ride, but Letitia grabs his arm like a vice grip, claiming he looks too pale to walk. Callan literally shoves Leon into the carriage, stating his family motto is to always listen to his daughter before slamming the door shut. Letitia laughs awkwardly, while Callan gives a knowing smirk, perfectly aware that his little genius just cracked the whole case no cap. Inside the carriage, Jade pieces together that Leon just killed Percy using a very simple trap. Letitia sneaks a glance at Leon, her mind racing as she tries to figure out his motive. She desperately wants to tip off Callan before she literally explodes from frustration. She remembers from the original novel that Callan is a righteous man, but rarely looks into the details of people's stories. Because of that, the original Callan ended up with a truly sorrowful, unhappy ending. Knowing it's time to act, Letitia spots her perfect opportunity. She gasps loudly, immediately grabbing Callan's attention. She plays the innocent kid, claiming the ribbon on her teddy bear's neck just fell out the window. She spins a quick lie, saying the maid tied it there this morning, completely baiting the trap. Callan completely falls for it, asking Jade and Leon to step out and look for it. Hearing this, Leon visibly flinches. He jumps right up, overly eager to get out in this sketchy, deserted alley. But before he can dip, Letitia grabs his sleeve, hitting him with a completely random question. She asks if they've ever met before. When he politely denies it, she drops a massive bomb, asking, "Then who are you right now?" She stares him down, stating as a fact that she met the real Leon a long time ago. To prove it, she asks Callan what color the station's clock tower is. He casually answers yellow. Letitia nods, pointing out that earlier today, Leon claimed the tower was blue. The fake Leon starts sweating profusely as his cover crumbles. He tries to play it off as a drunken mistake, but Letitia absolutely cooks him, revealing the tower does actually turn blue. She explains it's coated in special paint that only shifts to blue at night. Street kids use the blue clock tower as a secret code for night meetings. Because all the trains stop at 6 p.m., the station is totally deserted after dark. The only people who hang around the blue clock tower are pickpockets from the mountain village. Letitia confirms that no decent person from the countryside would ever know this secret. She reveals she met the real Leon at one of those night meetings, proving this guy is lying about his past. Jade connects the dots, realizing it's not a hallucination. There are literally two Leons. The fake Leon absolutely snaps, violently grabbing Letitia. He pulls a knife on her, using the little girl as a human shield and screaming for nobody to move. Suddenly, the real Leon bursts out of the carriage's hidden compartment. Letitia realizes her vision earlier wasn't a glitch. The brothers are actually identical twins. Callan's eyes go dead cold. He tells the fake Leon to let his daughter go if he wants a peaceful death. He steps forward, menacingly asking if the guy seriously plans to put a scratch on his lovely daughter's face. Without hesitating, Callan blasts him with dark magic, slamming the guy into the pavement like a sack of potatoes and sending the knife flying. Callan slowly approaches, his dark aura flaring as he asks if the guy really thought he couldn't do anything about a hostage situation. The dark magic wraps around the fake Leon's throat as Callan promises him the most miserable death imaginable. Suddenly, the real Leon pulls out his own dagger, pinning his twin down and offering to execute him right there to appease the Duke. Letitia completely panics, screaming for them to wait. Callan pauses, glancing back at his daughter as she begs him to stop. She insists she still wants to hear the twins' full story before anyone dies. Callan sighs and instantly disperses his deadly aura, completely whipped for his kid. He casually mentions he was just going to chop off the guy's arms, making Letitia yell that he'd bleed out and die. She proudly shows off that she didn't get a single scratch, making Callan back down. Jade drags the fake Leon back into the carriage, admitting he doesn't care about a murderer's backstory, but he'll listen for his baby sister. Letitia watches the dark magic bind the guy like a snake, suddenly noticing his clothes are completely soaked. Jade glares at the identical twins, demanding to know when they switched and which one of them actually murdered Percy. But Callan completely ignores the suspects, leaning in close to Letitia to ask how she knew all of these secret details. She sweats bullets, desperately trying to change the subject. Callan clicks his tongue, totally amused by how easily his daughter handles them. Jade yanks the gags out of the twins' mouths so they can finally talk. Callan forcefully grabs the fake Leon's chin, brutally warning that if he tries to bite his tongue to commit suicide, he will torture his brother to death. Jade sighs, telling his dad he should have covered Letitia's ears before saying something so unhinged, but she awkwardly admits she already heard every single word, no cap. Callan kicks off the interrogation, demanding to know why the fake Leon pulled off the murder. Letitia's big brain connects all the dots. She realizes the real Leon went to cut roses and secretly swapped places with his hidden twin brother, Ledin. While Ledin distracted them, Leon ambushed Percy. Then, using the mirror signal, they simply swapped back. She asks the twin how Percy died without making a single sound. The twin admits he covered Percy's mouth with a poisoned handkerchief to knock him out cold. He explains it was ridiculously easy to lure Percy away by just mentioning Elise's blue relics. Looking down, he firmly states he has zero regrets because that scumbag Percy made fun of their dead sister. The tragic backstory drops. Due to extreme poverty, their parents had to send Ledin away to a branch family as a foster kid. But that family went bankrupt, forcing Ledin onto the harsh streets as a pickpocket, which is how the twins eventually crossed paths again. They officially reunited when they were 10 years old. Letitia gasps, asking if they've been secretly living as a single person ever since. The twin nods, revealing they took turns going to the academy so Ledin could experience a normal aristocratic life. Jade acknowledges they must have practiced insanely hard to mimic each other, explaining why Leon's vibe always felt slightly off. Callan coldly asks why they killed Percy if they had such a good thing going. The twin grits his teeth, revealing Percy practically killed Elise. He explains Elise grew up so gorgeous that high-ranking nobles lined up to marry her, even offering to pay off her engagement to Percy. Knowing he had nothing but money, an insecure Percy made a horribly stupid move. Letitia listens intently, sensing the story is about to get much darker. The twin praises her sharp intuition, confirming that wasn't the end of the tragedy. He reveals that Percy got completely blackout drunk at a summer villa party. A group of evil nobles deliberately got Percy wasted so he would pass out, leaving Elise completely defenseless to their horrible actions. Jade clenches his fists in pure disgust, while Letitia solemnly asks if Elise took her own life afterward. The twin bitterly explains that noble families always cover up suicides by claiming the person died of pneumonia. Before cutting her own wrists, Elise told her brothers absolutely everything that happened. Letitia realizes the twins killed Percy in the exact same way out of pure poetic revenge. The twin tears up, remembering the one single week all three siblings lived happily together, a memory that became their only salvation. The twin begs them to spare his brother, offering himself up as an experimental subject for dark magic if they just let Ledin go. Callan coldly shuts him down, stating he doesn't do human experiments and those are just stupid rumors. Letitia hits him with one final question: how did Ledin know she would be waiting in the alley? Jade playfully pokes her head as the tension peaks. She breaks down the logic. Since they were all together during the murder, a third person had to be hiding on the island. Since the cops found nobody, the accomplice had to have escaped across the river near the suspension bridge. And right under that bridge is a hidden underground drain outlet. It's a secret escape route only street kids know about, and she absolutely cooked his alibi with that one clue. She flexes that her past life street smarts and detective novels helped her solve it, leaving the twin completely slumped in defeat. Letitia nervously looks up at Callan, wondering if he's going to brutally execute them right here. She admits she just wanted to find the real culprit, which is why she pushed to investigate them. Callan asks Jade for his input. Jade gently pats Letitia's head, admitting he actually sympathizes with them now that he's an older brother too. Jade's eyes go dark as he casually drops that if anyone ever touched his little sister. He flashes a terrifyingly cheerful smile, joking that he might just kill one of the twins right now to vent his hypothetical rage. But Jade ultimately decides to let it slide. Callan then turns to Letitia, asking her what her final verdict is. She absolutely panics, shocked that the Duke is letting a 10-year-old decide their fate. Callan hilariously threatens to just execute them if she doesn't pick a side, acting like a jealous kid begging for attention. Letitia thinks back to the tragic visions of Elise, genuinely feeling heartbroken for the poor girl. She looks up at Callan, hoping he makes a wise decision, knowing full well he's secretly a righteous guy. In the original novel, Callan was a ruthless dark hero who slaughtered criminals without mercy. But this time, because Letitia stalled him, he actually listened to their tragic story first. He realizes the twins aren't just cold-blooded killers, they were desperate brothers trying to protect their sister's honor. Callan softly thanks Letitia, admitting he would have made a huge mistake without her. He officially decides to spare their lives. But Callan isn't done yet. He leans in close to the twins, asking if they happen to remember the names of the other bastards at the villa that day. Letitia watches in utter disbelief. Callan promises to let them go free if they drop the names, looking like he's politely asking for a dinner recommendation when he's really preparing to go full John Wick on some nobles. Jade casually sits next to the tied-up man, looking completely relaxed. He hits the guy with a friendly smile, saying he's actually starting to like him. But the vibe instantly shifts as Jade drops a chilling threat about his sister. He whispers that if it were up to him, he would have ended the guy slowly and painfully. Watching from the stairs, Letitia realizes she completely underestimated these wealthy men. Callan steps up in his dramatic black cloak, declaring that taking out the trash is his specialty. Letitia suddenly remembers Callan's dark secret. He literally absorbs magic power from human bodies. He treats these targets like an all-you-can-eat buffet, but he has 3 strict rules for his meals. He only feeds on straight-up murderers or people who have already kicked the bucket. And his absolute favorite targets are scumbags who hurt innocent women. The tied-up twins grab each other's hands, crying tears of joy as they realize they aren't going to die today. Callan agrees to let them go, but not before snapping his fingers to leave a permanent magical tracking mark on them. The twins absolutely book it out of there like their pants are on fire. With the trash taken care of, Callan turns his attention back to his adorable daughter. He casually mentions that he really enjoyed his recent meal. The twin brothers freeze in their tracks, utterly horrified by what they just heard. Callan easily picks Letitia up, completely unfazed by the fact that he just consumed a dead guy named Percy. Letitia realizes this was Callan's twisted plan all along when he sent the twins to check on Percy's body. Jade shrugs it off, admitting Percy was absolute garbage anyway. The terrified twins finally creak the door open to leave for good. Callan lifts Letitia higher, saying that cleaning up messes is always a fun time. Suddenly, he looks her dead in the eye and declares that he knows her true identity. Letitia gulps nervously, sweating bullets under his intense gaze. But Callan just proudly proclaims that she's a total genius, causing Letitia to violently wave her arms in denial. Jade nods in agreement, pointing out that an uneducated street kid shouldn't be able to memorize complex patterns so easily. Letitia goes into full panic mode, frantically arguing that a real genius wouldn't have been begging on the streets. She hilariously tries to play dumb, pretending she can't even read a single word. Deep down, she remembers the harsh reality of shivering in the freezing cold. Looking out the window, she shudders as the winter chill brings back her dark memories. Callan gently sets her down with her teddy bear, deciding they need to test her brain power to be completely sure. He pats her head while she mentally spirals, terrified that failing the test means he'll throw her away like a broken toy. Back at the mansion, the loyal butler politely welcomes them home. Callan completely ignores the butler's questions and just flexes that his daughter is a certified genius. Letitia faceplants onto her massive bed, completely drained from the chaotic night. She imagines Callan bragging about her massive brain all through dinner. A soft knock interrupts her thoughts as Jade peeks his head into the room to check on her. She claims she's fine, but Jade notices she always looks depressed when their carriage passes a specific intersection. Clutching her bear, she quietly admits that she used to live in the dirty alleyways right behind that spot. She confesses that the memory of the freezing streets is permanently scarred into her mind. Jade gently pats her head, reminding her that they've sworn to leave their painful pasts behind them. Later that night, Letitia stares at her hand, recalling a strange vision she saw when touching Callan. She clutches her bear tighter, totally stressed out because the vision completely wrecks the plot of the original novel. Over the next few days, Callan completely drops the genius test, leaving Letitia to relax by the fireplace. Suddenly, Callan looks over his newspaper and asks if she wants to go out. He casually mentions taking her back to that coffee shop she absolutely loved. Letitia practically starts drooling as visions of cakes and donuts dance in her head. She sprints out of the room like a bat out of hell to get ready. Callan leans back with a smug, satisfied smile, completely whipped for his cute daughter. A few minutes later, Letitia steps out looking absolutely flawless in her little winter coat, asking to hold his hand. Callan completely loses his cool and violently hugs her, screaming that her cuteness is driving him insane. Letitia holds Callan's hand, hoping to catch another glimpse of his mysterious magical power. But she still can't see anything and wonders what kind of dark magic he's actually hiding. Suddenly, their carriage pulls up to Dr. Sybil's fancy research institute. Callan casually mentions they're just here for a small, simple test. Letitia realizes it's the dreaded genius test and absolutely loses her mind, feeling completely betrayed over their promised coffee shop trip. Callan literally drags her inside while she kicks and cries like a toddler at the dentist. Inside, they meet Dr. Sybil, a surprisingly young guy with round glasses and long white hair. Callan drops a seriously heavy threat, warning the doctor he'll be toast if he disrespects his daughter even a little bit. With that chilling warning, Callan pats Letitia's head and steps out to handle some quick business. Sybil introduces himself with a bright, friendly smile, but Letitia just gives him an aggressive, defensive pout. Sybil chuckles, calling her an adorable lost puppy, which only makes her glare harder. She doubts he's a real professor because he looks so young, but he proudly claims he's a certified genius. He reassures her that both he and the Duke just want to help her figure her life out. Letitia coldly shuts him down, flat out stating she doesn't need help because she isn't a genius at all. Sybil just finds her blunt honesty incredibly cute. He casually roasts Callan, saying it's super common for foolish parents to overhype their kids. He quickly clarifies that Callan is different from parents who exploit their children, but insists she'll need guidance if she really is gifted. Letitia finds him super annoying, right before the clumsy doctor drops a heavy book straight onto his own head. He awkwardly rubs his head, trying to laugh off the embarrassing pain. The test officially begins, and Sybil hits her with complex mazes and crazy number sequences. Letitia struggles, realizing she never received a proper education in this life or her past one. She gives a very simple, literal answer to a strategy question, and Sybil just smiles quietly. Sybil wraps up the test and steps away to compile the results, leaving Letitia to stew in her anxiety. Her brain is absolutely fried from looking at all the intense math and logic problems. She rests her head on the desk, terrified that Callan will be heavily disappointed in her. She overthinks everything, wondering if Callan only wants her around if she's useful for his dark work. Her imagination runs wild, picturing Callan kicking her to the curb or forcing her to scrub floors like Cinderella. Overwhelmed by her own dark thoughts, she completely breaks down and starts crying. Just then, Callan returns and immediately notices his daughter's tears. He asks if the doctor said something mean, but she frantically shakes her head no. She sobs uncontrollably, apologizing over and over for not being a massive brainiac. Callan looks completely confused as she babbles about failing the test and being totally useless to him. She sniffles, admitting she thought he would be angry with her. Callan pulls her into a tight hug, sighing that daughters really do play with their father's hearts. He explains that he never expected her to be a genius. He was just worried about her well-being. He reveals that in his family, true geniuses often face severe depression because their bodies literally can't handle their supercomputer brains. He mentions Jade struggled mentally as a child, so he just wanted to be prepared if Letitia faced the same thing. He gently caresses her head, assuring her he's just happy to have such a sweet, pretty child. He pats her back, telling her that even if she's completely clueless, her only job is to spend his massive piles of cash. Letitia wipes her eyes, thinking his way of comforting people is weird, but it totally works. Callan reminds her of his promise to buy her anything, and she instantly demands chocolate cake. Just as they're about to leave, Sybil awkwardly peeks his head out of the office. With stars in his eyes, the doctor excitedly announces that the results are ready. Callan tells him to wrap it up in 10 seconds because his kid needs her cake, but Sybil drops a bombshell. Letitia actually has outstanding intelligence. He slams his hands on the desk, passionately explaining that her linguistic and improvisational skills are off the charts. He adds that her memorization and math abilities are incredible for someone with zero formal schooling. Callan instantly hits maximum smugness, declaring that his daughter is a 100% certified genius just because she's talented and cute. He pokes her cheek, joking that being rich and smart is an absolute cheat code for a fun life. Sybil tries to hold them back for more academic counseling, but Callan completely ghosts him, turning his back to go secure that chocolate cake. Sybil excitedly suggests a one-on-one counseling session with Letitia. Callan looks absolutely livid, glaring daggers at the doctor, but Sybil explains the kid needs to be alone to truly open up. Callan reluctantly steps out, stomping away, while Letitia feels perfectly safe knowing her overpowered dad is right outside. Sybil leads her into his personal laboratory, a massive room stuffed with ancient books and crazy science equipment. He gently lifts her up, mentioning a special training course for talented kids, though he doubts the overprotective Duke would ever allow it. They sit down at his messy desk, and Sybil announces it's time for the final test. He challenges her to find a hidden riddle in the room just for fun, giving her a few basic clues about the furniture. Letitia's brain kicks into high gear, realizing this room is an exact replica of the first one, turning this into a massive game of spot the difference. Her eyes immediately lock onto a suspicious painting hanging on the wall. It shows a perfectly circular white fence surrounded by bright yellow flowers. She quickly mentally compares it to the painting in the other room, which featured a forest with a straight cross-shaped intersection. She goes into deep meditation, piecing together the core shapes, a cross and a circle. She starts scanning the shelves for books about crosses and circles, seriously impressing Sybil, who watches the little genius go to work. Sybil hands her a book about crosses, but Letitia spots a deliberate circular dust mark left on the shelf right where the book was sitting. Her mind goes completely galaxy brain, combining the cross as a plus sign, the two circles, and a snake biting its own tail. She proudly concludes that the hidden answer is an infinity symbol. She asks the stunned doctor if he has any books with the word infinity in the title. With a dramatic flair, Sybil pulls out a hidden book titled Infinite Destiny. Letitia throws her hands up in pure joy for solving the puzzle, and Sybil decides to wrap things up before Callan completely loses his patience. He hands her a business card with the secret address to his laboratory printed on the back. Gently patting her shoulder, he explains that growing up as a genius can be isolating, drawing from his own childhood struggles. He warmly promises that his door is always open if she ever feels lost and needs a teacher. He then drops a total truth bomb, assuring her that the Duke doesn't want to use her for dark work, he's just genuinely proud of her. Letitia is totally shocked that Sybil read her insecurities like an open book, finally realizing her dad is just a massive softie showing off his kid. Meanwhile, Callan waits outside in the dark, adjusting his gloves and looking absolutely ready to throw hands because the test took too long.